Chapter 2458. This water bottle was of course taken out by Chu Yang. What was inside was naturally not ordinary water, but the purest spring of life. Chu Yang had long realized that if they continued to fight like this, even if the number of heavy pills in the tribulation space was not small, there would be a moment when they would run out. It was definitely not a good idea to just sit and wait like this. He had to think of a way to increase his supply and reduce his expenditure. After some consideration, Chu Yang thought of the best substitute, the Spring of Life. Although the Spring of Life did not have the magical effect of reviving and prolonging one's life with heavy pills, it had special effects for recovering fatigue, vitality, energy, and even cultivation. In the current situation, it was even better than heavy pills in some aspects. Not to mention other things. Just from the taste alone, on this battlefield where the smell of gunpowder was extremely intense, a mouthful of water was definitely more comfortable than a pill. As for the Spring of Life, he had a whole lot of it in his space. That was truly an inexhaustible supply. In any case, it would be quite difficult for a dozen people to drink it all with their bellies wide open. So, Chu Yang chose 2 empty spots and found the right opportunity to put more than 10 bottles into Mo Qingwu's and Zi Sheqing's space rings. As long as there was time, he would take it out and let everyone drink a few mouthfuls. The 3 of them distributed the Spring of Life in 3 directions, and only 1 bottle appeared each time. Their actions were very secretive. Ji Huitian and the rest were all battle-hardened people. How could they not know that this was a crucial thing? They must not let the extraterrestrial demons know about it, so everyone was very careful. The Spring of Life, no matter which plane it was in, was definitely a good thing. With the Spring of Life, as long as they were not seriously injured, they did not need to use heavy pills. The amount was also so sufficient. If they felt tired, they could drink a mouthful. They would instantly feel refreshed and even have a lasting effect on the battle. With this as a foundation, everyone was secretly happy. Ji Huitian even smacked his lips and transmitted a message to Wuxia Yangquo. I really don't know where they got so many good things. The heavy pills are still fine. But that spring water, why does it look like the Spring of Life? If it's really the Spring of Life, then it's too exaggerated. In my opinion, that thing is even rarer than heavy pills. How can they have so much of it, so much that they drink it like plain water? Did they rob the elves? He smacked his lips. Forget it, it doesn't matter who they rob. Now I can finally relax. I even feel that as long as I have the spring water, even if I have to fight for my entire life, it won't be too hard. Zhuoqiu Yunfu rolled his eyes in exasperation. How could it be similar? That was clearly the Spring of Life. Do you really think you're drinking plain water? He actually wanted to drink it for his entire life. What a fool's dream. This guy has lived for nearly 100,000 years. He has lived like a dog. He doesn't have a single bit of human brain. It's really shameful to be associated with him. With such powerful material support, everyone was a high-level saint, and their powers were endless. The only thing to worry about was the exhaustion of their bodies. But now he could recover at any time. Furthermore, he could recover to his peak condition. The more he fought, the more excited he became. If it wasn't for the unpleasant smell of the battlefield, everyone would have thought that it would be good to keep fighting like this. Under the siege of tens of millions of enemies, a mere dozen people actually came up with such a crazy idea. One had to say this was really a miracle. The next moment, Chu Yang's eyes flashed. He suddenly realized that something was wrong. Because the attacks of the heavenly demons suddenly became even more frenzied. But the heavenly demon horde didn't launch any self-detonation attacks anymore. They simply charged forward ferociously. Therefore, at this moment, the threat to everyone decreased. Only the intensity of the attacks increased by 10 times. Also, the heavenly demon horde's goal was no longer to kill or injure everyone. Instead, they shifted their target to the water sack in everyone's hands. Chu Yang instantly pondered. This bunch of heavenly demon horde isn't stupid. How long has it been? They actually realized that there's something wrong with the water sack. At this moment, the water sack was in Yan Fei's hands. He raised his head and poured the last bit of the Spring of Life into his throat. Then he laughed loudly and casually threw the water sack away. Actually, there was really nothing left in the water sack. It was just an empty container. But at that moment, no less than hundreds of heavenly demons chased after the water sack that was flying in the air. Idiot! Xinyuan Changkong couldn't stop them in time. He stomped his feet and scolded. The heavenly demon horde's actions clearly show that they want to know what's in the water sack. That's why they came up to snatch it. Why did you throw it away instead? The other brothers knew that the situation was urgent. They all flew up to snatch the water sack, but countless heavenly demons knocked them back as if their lives depended on it. They were actually using their lives to stop them. The water sack was about to fall into the hands of the heavenly demons. Yin Fei was stunned. But there's nothing left in there now, Xinyuan Changkong sighed. His tone was full of disappointment. They don't need anything too specific. As long as they get it and smell it, they can roughly know what's inside. We're all old foxes. Don't tell me that you don't even have this bit of common sense? Yin Fei was shocked. He hurriedly flew over to save the water sack. But it was destined that it was too late. One of the heavenly demons had already snatched the empty water sack into his hands. Just as everyone was complaining about the terrible situation, they saw that heavenly demon and the water sack exploded in the air without any warning. During this period of time, there was absolutely no one who could pose a threat to it. But it exploded just like that. It was the divine spirit of the calamity. However, the divine soul of Calamity's attack had almost exposed his existence. In fact, the few higher-ups of the heavenly demons above were frowning in confusion. What's going on? We've clearly gotten it. Moreover, the people who tried to stop us were all stopped. There's no threat at all. Why did it suddenly and inexplicably die? Could it be that there's still a hidden enemy? All the demons looked around suspiciously. Chu Yang didn't want to expose his trump card too early. His eyes turned and he suddenly had an idea. It seemed like this was an opportunity? After a while, everyone seemed to be a little tired. Chu Yang suddenly took out a water sack from his ring and shouted, "Everyone drink some water before fighting." As he spoke, he threw the water sack in Mo Qingwu's direction. But this throw seemed to have been accidentally hit by someone. Instantly, it lost its accuracy and deviated to an unimaginably terrible degree. The water sack that was originally flying toward Mo Qingwu actually landed in the arms of one of the heavenly demons with a loud bang. "Oh no!" Chu Yang exclaimed. He hurriedly rushed over to snatch it. "Oh no!" Seeing this, the heavenly demons were also shocked. The whole formation almost showed a flaw because of this momentary pause. If the heavenly demons knew the secret of the spring water, they would probably change their tactics immediately. They wouldn't be as relaxed as they were now. What kind of person was this? How could this guy be so reckless? It's fine if he didn't contribute, but how could he help? But now was not the time to blame Chu Yang at all. Several people left the formation and went forward to snatch the water sack. That heavenly demon was originally preparing to snatch the water sack later. He was eyeing it covetously and was always ready. Once a water sack appeared, he would immediately rush over without a care for his own safety. But who would have thought that the thing he had been dreaming of would actually fall into his arms just like that? He only felt that at that moment he seemed to have bumped into something in his arms. In this chaotic place of fighting, his brain actually short-circuited for a moment. His subconscious reaction caused him to throw out the water sack in a daze. The thousands of heavenly demons at the side scolded together. There was actually such an idiot. Fuck. In such a short time, the thing that we couldn't snatch even after sacrificing no less than thousands of heavenly demons was in your arms, and you actually threw it away carelessly. For a moment, everyone jumped up and tried to snatch it with all their might. Chu Yang pretended to snatch the water sack after it flew out, but who would have thought that this guy would actually be so brainless and throw it back? This was too weird. For a moment he couldn't help but feel a little stunned. You don't even want it when it's given to you? Seeing that the water sack was about to return to his hands, Chu Yang was extremely sick of it and cursed in his heart. What a fucking weirdo. How can I continue acting like this? Fuck, your heavenly emperor has educated a bunch of brainless things like you. I gave you face but you didn't want to be slapped. I gave you a bun but you didn't want to eat it. You just had to eat shit. Fortunately, at this moment, Ji Huitian rushed back on his sword in time, and sword light flashed. Chu Yang screamed, and his body seemed to have been attacked by something. He fell sideways and coincidentally blocked Ji Huitian. In his fluster, the tip of his foot also coincidentally kicked the water sack. Thus the water sack flew out again. The heavenly demon who threw the water sack was desperately rushing forward to snatch it, but who knew that in the blink of an eye, the water sack would return to his arms. The joy of regaining something that he had lost was too shocking. Suddenly, his thoughts short-circuited and he subconsciously blurted out, "What the fuck?" He was still confused. Fuck, why is this water sack so fated with me? Only when he thought of this did he come back to his senses. He hugged the water sack and turned to run. But dozens of sword lights had already attacked fiercely from behind. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Although Wuxia Yongqiuo and the others were also fighting for it, after seeing Chu Yang's actions, they immediately slowed down. Chu Yang must have a reason for doing this. But even so, the attacking power of a group of high-level saints was still quite strong. The guy who snatched the water sack fled desperately, and the surrounding heavenly demons desperately blocked and attacked for him. Unexpectedly, all the skin and flesh on his back were scraped off, and even 7 or 8 of his bones were broken. Only then did he luckily escape the pursuit and fly into the sky. Blood splattered all the way to the sky. This water sack was really not easy to snatch. Fortunately, Elder Yi still made a great contribution. Ignoring the serious injuries on his body, he hurriedly rushed forward and knelt down as if he was presenting a treasure. He presented the water sack and said, "Sir, your humble servant, dog-raising dog, has not let you down. In Guangzhou 37 games was playing here. Last night the plane was late and when he arrived here he was drunk. Didn't they say that Southerners can't drink? I came here with the mentality of sweeping, but in the end I was swept away here." Chapter 24:59. When this dog-raised dogdy said this sentence, there was a hint of complacency in his tone. I can even use such a profound phrase like, "I was fortunate enough to not disappoint you." Can be seen that I've improved a lot now. I can't just call myself Quanyang Do Di anymore. I should call myself Quanyang Do Di. Such a resounding name should be the name of His Majesty. The golden-crowned heavenly demon nodded with satisfaction and said, "Quanyang Do Di. Well, you've done well." Quanyang Do Di's face was full of glory. He stood at attention and said loudly, "It's all thanks to you, my lord." The golden-crowned heavenly demon rolled his eyes. "When did I say that I'm going to cultivate you?" Ignoring him, he took the water sack and shook it. There was no sound inside. Then he said, "I'd like to see what magical thing is inside." The high-ranking heavenly demon generals around all craned their necks to take a look. They were all full of curiosity. What magical thing is it? Just one sip can restore all the strength. Such a treasure of heaven and earth. If I don't take a look at it, I won't be able to sleep in the future. The cork of the water sack was opened in an instant. It was very easy. The next moment, a group of heavenly demon leaders gathered around and looked at it. What's inside? Without any warning, with a whoosh sound, a mass of grayish-black fog gushed out from inside. In the blink of an eye, the dense fog had already filled an area of no less than 100 feet. Including the golden-crowned heavenly demon and the 7 generals present, none of the 7 people were spared. They all took a deep breath. They were watching excitedly with their mouths open. It was really not easy not to breathe. Ouch! A shrill scream instantly rose to the sky. A general covered his eyes and screamed first, "My eyes, my eyes." It was the gray fog that rushed out. This guy was the most unlucky. Not only did he suck in a mouthful of the fog from his throat to his lungs, but his eyes were also touched by the fog. The effect of the thick fog was really good. It could be said that the effect was immediate. There was an intense stinging sensation in his eyes. In the blink of an eye, his eyes actually started to rot. As everyone knew, the eyes were actually a layer of tissue wrapped around a bag of water. They were always watery. If they were poisoned, especially if it was the kind of poison that had the effect of rotting, the effect would be immediate and immediate. What's more, when Minister Chu was preparing for this show for fear that it wouldn't act up quickly enough, he not only added in Chu Lure's innate poison, but also Wu Jueqing's shadowless poison. Lastly, he even added in the decaying corpse poison. It was as if Minister Chu had included all 3 of the most powerful poisons in the world in one go. Not to mention these few heavenly demons, even if their heavenly emperor suddenly smelled it, he would also curse loudly. The golden-crowned sky fiend somersaulted out as he cursed angrily, "Dad! This is highly toxic." That dog raised by a dog was currently bowing and preparing to accept the reward from his superiors. When he saw this turn of events, he was instantly dumbfounded. "Sir, this, it would have been better if he hadn't said anything." Once he did, he immediately attracted the attention of the 7 people. In an instant, new and old hatred surged in their hearts. Everyone couldn't wait to skin him alive. Damn it, if not for you bastard, would we be able to poison them? And such a sinister super poison at that? Originally, we were guarding the formation at a height of several thousand feet. There was no wind and no danger. The enemy was busy escaping and wouldn't come up to fight with us no matter what. Who would have thought that you would directly send the highly toxic poison down our throats? This is really, that. Anger rose in their hearts. Evil grew in their guts. The 7 of them struck at the same time and beat up this dog raised by a dog, who was asking for rewards on the spot. "You fucking dog raised by a dog. You're really raised by a dog. You're really a dog raised by a dog." After cursing, they felt that something was wrong with their throats. They had actually started to speak hoarsely? Everyone opened their mouths and looked at each other. Only then did they see that the insides of each other's throats were already pitch black. Furthermore, the insides were squirming and rotting. The situation seemed to be getting worse. How could this be? What kind of poison is this? The golden-crowned sky fiend cried out in fear. Originally, although he knew that the thick fog was poisonous and extraordinary, but the golden-crowned sky fiend was confident in his cultivation. He didn't take this poison seriously and didn't even try to expel the poison at the first moment. But at this moment he realized that something was wrong. He tried his best to suppress it. But even with his supreme demonic skills, he still couldn't do anything about this poison. Not only was he unable to expel it, he couldn't even suppress it. Other than that, he also clearly felt that because of the breath he took earlier, a lot of the poison had already entered his lungs. Now his internal organs were all in great pain. Presumably, they were all being corroded by the highly toxic poison. The one who was in the most serious situation was still that sky fiend who had his eyes sprayed by the poisonous fog. Right now he was completely out of control, screaming and rolling around in pain. He who had lost his rationality desperately used his hands to grab at his eye sockets. With one grab he pulled out 2 of his eyeballs. However, he didn't realize that even the blood that flowed out had already turned black and then turned into air. He screamed so miserably that it didn't sound like a human's voice. He grabbed at his eye sockets and grabbed at his head. With one grab he pulled out white bones. Then he screamed all the way as he tumbled down from the sky. The group of Sky Fiend higher-ups screamed collectively. They looked at their most unlucky comrade who had fallen down in fear. The group of Sky Fiends had never dreamt that the degree of this poison could be so terrifying. Everything that happened earlier was still vivid in their minds. It was as if they had experienced it themselves. In addition, all of their internal organs were already burning and they were in great pain. If they didn't take any measures quickly, a shining example would be right in front of them. That golden-crowned Sky Fiend had the highest status here. He actually forcefully held back the scream that was about to leave his mouth. But without another word, he fled at full speed without any warning. He disappeared in a flash. In this situation they couldn't care less about any battle. Their own lives were more important. If they didn't think of a way to deal with such a terrifying poison that they had never heard of before, they might really die here for no reason. But the golden-crowned Skyfiend's cultivation was exquisite and could still suppress it. But that didn't mean that the other Skyfiend generals could do the same. The other generals were already screaming miserably, and their faces were all twisted in agony. Blood gradually seeped out of their 7 orifices. Their eyes were overflowing with extreme fear. That was a kind of fear towards death and a desire to live. Other than that, there was still a serious question. What kind of poison was this? How could it be so poisonous? After so many years, they had never seen such a poison before. Where did it come from? The effect of the poison in this water bag was unexpectedly good. It actually wiped out all the higher-ups of the Skyfiend generals in one fell swoop. Other than the golden-crowned Skyfiend who managed to escape without a trace, the situation of the other Skyfiend generals was already very clear. It was absolutely impossible for them to survive. When they were most unprepared, they directly sucked the poison into their internal organs. This was something that even the gods couldn't save. Even Chuyang himself didn't expect that this thing that he had done on the spur of the moment would actually suddenly establish an unprecedented merit. It really didn't take long. Puff, 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 one by one they fell from the sky. When these Skyfiend generals fell to the ground, it was really a tragic sight. They actually directly turned into a pile of minced meat. It couldn't be helped. Who asked their tyrannical cultivation to be completely depleted in such a short period of time because of the battle with the poison? So much so that they couldn't resist the impact of falling from the sky and were directly smashed into pieces. The tyrannical high-level Skyfiend demonic body was completely useless at this moment. This extremely strange phenomenon that outsiders couldn't understand was only seen by a relatively small number of people for the time being. Most of the Skyfiends were still ignorant and completely unaware that a major change had occurred in their higher-ups. There were indeed not many people who paid attention to this change, but there were still a few people, such as the strategists of the Calamity Battle formation. They were the group of people who paid the most attention to the big picture and the minute details. How could the strange change in the sky escape from this group of people who were observant? The battle was still going on, but Wuxia Yongqiu and the others were already greatly relieved. The other party was already a group of dragons without a leader. As long as they discovered that there was no Delian commanding them after a period of time, they would naturally collapse and disperse. It was just that the strategists of the calamity also underestimated Chu Yang's scheme in their hearts. This scheme of Chu Yang's wasn't a very brilliant method, but the effect was unexpectedly good, and the result was even more shocking. It made the situation develop in the most ideal direction. It was simply inconceivable, absolutely inconceivable. In this world there were indeed things that couldn't be thought of, but there was nothing that couldn't be done. Ji Huitian flew forward quickly and killed a bloody path. He forced his way to the place where those Skyfiend generals had died. He cut off their heads with his sword and held them in his hand. Then he whizzed back with his sword. Within a few hundred miles of the Calamity battle formation, it was directly a flesh and blood mill. Countless lives died here. Some died, and some had their souls scattered. The battle was extremely fierce. However, after a period of continuous battle, until Chu Yang and the others broke out of the encirclement, the generals of the Skyfiend army suddenly realized that something was wrong. Why haven't we received any new orders? Without any new orders, what should we do next? Why isn't anyone talking? Demon cubs. Those bullshit generals of yours have all been killed by me. At this time, Ji Huitian actually left the Calamity battle formation. He was holding 7 or 8 heads in his hands. He laughed wildly and flew forward at high speed in the sky, deliberately letting the Skyfiend army see the faces of the bunch of heads in his hands. Chapter 2460. This matter completely destroyed the fighting spirit of the heavenly demon army. General? It's really the general. Can't be. Then you? It's really the general's head. The general is dead. He's really dead. How can this be? What should we do? Then you, the expected beginning of a rout finally began at this moment, and it was out of control. In a large-scale battle between two armies, the commanding general was always the morale and courage of the soldiers. Whenever the commanding general was killed, the morale of the soldiers would inevitably be greatly affected, and the situation of total collapse could occur at any time. When these few heads appeared, the only surviving heavenly demon with a golden crown didn't appear to preside over the situation. The morale of the heavenly demon army instantly collapsed, and they lost their fighting spirit. They still had to face the all-out charge of dozens of high-level saints. The millions of people instantly scattered like birds and beasts, fleeing in all directions. Instead, they crashed into the defensive line at the back. The news of the general being killed spread like a plague, rapidly spreading to all the heavenly demon army. The morale of the heavenly demon army instantly collapsed. Faced with such an advantageous situation, Chu Yang and the rest naturally had high morale. They advanced triumphantly and chased madly. As a result, an extremely strange phenomenon appeared. There were only dozens of people in total, but they were chasing millions of heavenly demons wantonly. This situation was really so strange that it made one's scalp tingle. If anyone saw this scene, there would only be one question in their heart: how fierce were these people? As he chased, Chu Yang sighed with regret in his heart. Today's matter is really such a pity. Why wasn't the one who used the poison just now Chu Lu or herself? If that cousin of his was here, the results would definitely be more than just this little bit of battle results. After all, in terms of using poison, I'm probably not even an amateur. I'm just making up the numbers. She's the professional, and it's appropriate to have her own specialization. If the heavenly demons knew what Chu Yang was thinking at this moment, this army of millions would probably vomit blood and die at the same time, without the need for Chu Yang and his brothers to chase after them. You fucking water sack. A bullshit plan that can't be put on the table, and you've wiped out all the higher-ups in one fell swoop, causing the total defeat of our army of millions, and you're still not satisfied. What more do you want? Humans can't be so shameless. You have to have a bottom line. After charging out for a while longer, the Sky Demon army had completely dispersed. Apart from a few scattered soldiers and many corpses, most of the demons were nowhere to be found. Only now did everyone stop and gasp for breath. After the alarm was lifted, they suddenly relaxed. They were shocked to realize that the tiredness that had accumulated over the past few days of continuous fighting made them feel dizzy. Many of them sat down on the ground and gasped for breath. A person's energy, physical strength, cultivation, and even life force could be replenished by external forces. The only thing that couldn't be replenished was the spirit. Once the excitement was over, the spirit would dissipate, and the previously neglected fatigue would double. This was also because these people's cultivation was extremely high, and they had been nourished by heavy pills and the spring of life. Otherwise, it wouldn't be strange for a few of them to suddenly die. Hey! Ji Huitian staggered over and slapped Chu Yang's shoulder. It's so small, but it's still good. Just a single water sack was enough to instantly disintegrate an army of millions. What a good plan. Fine, fine, fine. Respect, respect. Good job. Chu Yang touched his nose and smiled. You're too kind. A certain king of hell was rarely modest. He also knew that his water sack plan was really a bit crude. It really didn't deserve such high praise. He was completely lucky to be able to succeed this time. So Minister Chu knew his own limits. What do you mean by that? It's absolutely amazing. It's so amazing. The other guy winked at Chu Yang. Then he raised his thumb high under Chu Yang's nose. Brother, I'll tell you the truth. I was scolding you in my heart all the way here. You said that you didn't even make a move on such a long road. You said that you were inferior to those two girls. I never expected that you would make such an earth-shattering move. You can't hide your intentions from your face. You're amazing. You're really amazing. Chu Yang listened with black lines on his forehead. Is this guy praising me? Ji Huitian laughed and patted Chu Yang's shoulder vigorously. He didn't regard himself as an outsider and said, Tell me what kind of mechanism is in that water sack. What magical things are in it? It actually made a high-level saint flee for his life and 7 saint-level generals die from the poison? You've just said that you're rich and everything is done. You're really too domineering. Chu Yang touched his nose and smiled. Haha, that water sack is just an ordinary water sack. There's really no mechanism inside it. I just put a little bit of innate poison. That's all. What? Innate poison. Everyone bared their teeth. That thing was a legendary poison that had been lost for God knows how many years. This guy actually had it? Yes, I was afraid that the effect wouldn't be good, so I added a little bit more shadowless poison. Chu Yang coughed. Everyone was stunned. What the heck? That shadowless poison was the trump card of the legendary venerable poison master millions of years ago? It was recognized as the #1 poison in the world? It was even more famous than innate poison. No wonder this group of extraterrestrial demons died so quickly. 2 strange poisons were used at the same time. It really didn't make sense that they didn't die. While everyone was sighing in their hearts, they heard Chu Yang say a little embarrassedly, after all, the target had a high-level saint. I was afraid that the 2 poisons might not be enough. So I added some decaying poison. Hiss! Everyone widened their eyes in unison and sucked in cold air. They felt a toothache. They looked at Chu Yang as if they were looking at a legendary prehistoric monster that had suddenly appeared out of nowhere. In terms of reputation, the decaying corpse poison was far inferior to the other 2 poisons. However, regardless of whether it was the innate poison or the shadowless poison, they were both top-notch poisons. They could take a person's life in an instant. Although the decaying corpse poison also had the effect of destroying a person's life, it was more of a corrosive and persistent poison. Its main use was to continuously inflict damage. In terms of viciousness, the decaying corpse poison was the best of the 3. After all, the first 2 poisons only took a person's life. The decaying poison not only took a person's life, but also caused a person to die miserably. When these 3 poisons were used together, one could imagine how terrifying and vicious the culprit was. It's really. Ji Huitian bit his teeth as if he had a toothache. He couldn't help but swallow his saliva. After saying really for a long time, he said, It's really too vicious, too insidious, too vicious, too. Yes. Yen Fei rushed up excitedly. Let me tell you, brother. There are not many people in my generation who can make me respect. But now, old Chu, you are definitely the #1. This is really. How did you come up with such a vicious method to end your family's bloodline? Do you often do this kind of thing? Black lines appeared on Chu Yang's forehead again. He didn't hide his anger at all as he stared at this guy. He almost wanted to kick this guy to the southern heavenly gate. Do you know how to speak? Do you know how to praise people? Do you have to say it so bluntly and unpleasantly? You're right. There were actually more than 20 tribulation brothers. It's really too vicious, really too insidious, really too inhumane. It's really the first time I've seen such a vicious character. Then everyone laughed together. But I like it. Ah. Chu Yang's handsome face darkened as he stared at this group of shameless people. He could only smile bitterly. The few people who didn't participate in the praise of Chu Yang made up for it. Zhuoqiu Yangqiuo, Shimen Wanli, Shenyuan Changkong, Zhuge Shao, Dongfang Duwu and Dugu Wule. These 3 tribulation think tanks took a step forward in unison. Chu Yang raised his head in shock. Shimen Wanli's eyes were filled with deep respect. The other 5 people's eyes were shining with disbelief and excitement. They looked at him like this, but it was as if they were looking at another person they hadn't seen in a long time. Zhuqiu Yongquo's Adam's apple moved. He said dryly, "Very good. Very good. Thank you." His voice was actually trembling slightly. Then everyone bowed together. They bowed to the ground. They didn't get up for a long time. Chu Yang's heart skipped a beat. He hurriedly raised his hand and said, "Why do you have to do this? I'm also a part of this battle. It's my duty to destroy the enemy. Shouldn't I?" Everyone straightened up and smiled at the same time. Their faces were flushed with excitement. However, they still didn't reveal Chu Yang's true identity despite being well aware of it. However, their expressions clearly told Chu Yang, "We already know your true identity." Chu Yang smiled bitterly. Which one of these people wasn't a world-shaking talent? Wisdom that could turn the situation around? Which one of them would be inferior to any hero or wise person in the world? It would be fine if he didn't make a move. But he had made 2 moves in a row. The first time he arranged for Mo Qingwu and Zi Xiqing to enter the tribulation battle formation. The second time he set up a trap to kill the higher-ups of the extraterrestrial demons. And so many heavy pills appeared. If this person still couldn't guess his identity, then it would be really strange. But everyone was wise after all. Of course, they wouldn't reveal Chu Yang's identity at this time. Once everyone knew, even if they kept it a secret, there would still be clues in their minds. It wouldn't be good if the enemy found out. Therefore, even though everyone was excited, they all maintained a tacit understanding. In the next 3 days, the heavenly demons didn't make any moves at all. But everyone could clearly feel that there would be an even more tragic battle waiting for them in front of them. It was a feeling that a storm was coming. Everyone was a veteran of the battlefield. They could feel this feeling very clearly. The pressure was intense. And in this rare short period of time, everyone also seized the time to recover their cultivation. Every moment, they were accumulating strength to prepare for battle. Everyone knew that the next time they came into contact, it would definitely not be like the previous wave of various situations. The next battle would be the one that would decide their life and death. Chapter 2461. The previous wave was, in fact, just an ambush by the golden-crowned heavenly devil. It could be said that they had come prepared. However, their overall strength was relatively weak. Moreover, they had been wiped out by Chu Yang without dispatching any of their high-end fighting strength. This was the biggest reason why there had been a one-sided massacre in the battle. But when they were prepared for the next wave, it would definitely not be so easy. And along the way, what puzzled the others the most was Zhuqiu Yongquo and the rest's attitude towards Chu Yang suddenly changed greatly. The other Tribulation brothers changed their view of Chu Yang because they approved of Chu Yang and felt that this little guy was very compatible with them. Internally, they treated him like a good friend. However, Zhuqiu Yongquo and the rest's attitude was a kind of faint respect. Although they had already tried their best to restrain and conceal this respect and did not show it too obviously, the feeling of returning, after tens of thousands of years, was really hard for them to contain. They still could not hide it perfectly. This made Ji Huitian and the others, who were still confused, even more confused. After walking forward for about half a day, that unusually strong and oppressive feeling actually became more and more intense. This place was at most only 1,000 miles away from the first bridge. After almost crossing the mountain in front, they arrived in the blink of an eye. And behind them was a boundless forest, which was the place where they met the 2 survivors of Purple Cloud Heavens. And after crossing this mountain, they would once again enter that uninhabited death zone for 1,000 miles, where there were eerie white bones everywhere on the battlefield. Until now, the heavenly devils still had not taken any action. Chu Yang and the rest of the Tribulation's think tanks could basically guess with certainty that the opponent's next wave of action was in front of them. They would definitely not allow them to return to the first bridge safely. All of a sudden, Zhuqiu Yongquo and Ji Huitian, who were walking at the front, both stopped at the same time. They quietly looked at the mountain peak that was close at hand and said softly, "They're here." Following this sentence, as if it had been prearranged, there was suddenly a loud boom on the mountain peak. Demonic aura filled the sky. Countless heavenly devils appeared at the top of the mountain. It actually appeared with the force of a huge mountain. The 2 leading heavenly devils in golden robes and golden crowns stood in the sky with their hands clasped behind their backs, coldly looking at Chu Yang and the others at the foot of the mountain. The aura of a sovereign overlooking the world arose spontaneously. "It's actually the heavenly demon king." Ji Huitian smiled bitterly and said, "This time? I'm afraid we're really in big trouble." They actually sent out 2 heavenly devil king level experts at once. These 2 heavenly demons are 2 of the 8 heavenly demon kings. Zhuqiu Yunfu sighed deeply while his gaze was heavy, and he didn't conceal his unprecedented vigilance in the slightest. Are they very powerful? Chu Yang also felt the terror of these two guys. So he couldn't help but ask in a low voice. He's more than powerful. Zhuqiu Yunfu sighed softly and soundlessly. These two heavenly demon kings, according to the ranks of the Heaven Imperial Court, are almost equivalent to the level of two emperors. Facing these two people at the same time is almost... Zhuge smiled and said softly, facing the East Sovereign and the Demon Empress at the same time. Even though their actual strength is most likely not comparable to the East Sovereign and the Demon Empress, they're definitely stronger than the Extreme Heaven Merciless Emperor. That's to say they're basically equivalent to two heavenly emperors of black clouds, Yuan Tianji? Chu Yang asked in a heavy voice. More or less. Zhuqiu Yunfu nodded heavily. Hiss, Chu Yang took in a breath of cold air. Suddenly he felt an extreme sense of danger and oppression coming at him. An unprecedented crisis appeared at the border of the safest area. Chu Yang was well aware of Yuan Tianji's true strength. Even though he didn't really fight with Yuan Tianji at his peak state, the strength that Yuan Tianji, who had been weakened layer by layer and whose original strength was less than 10% of his peak state, was already so terrifying. He and his brothers were almost completely wiped out. And that was in the Heaven Imperial Court, his home ground. But now, at this moment, he actually met two heavenly demon kings who were in perfect condition and had millions of demon soldiers supporting them. They showed up forcefully and cut off their escape route. Even though the comrades by his side were much more powerful than the brothers back then, the situation was not optimistic at all. On the contrary, it was even more dangerous because when faced with such powerful enemies, there would be the danger of all of them being wiped out at the slightest move. The two great heaven demon kings in front of him were almost as powerful as the East Emperor and the Demon Empress. When faced with such super experts, did they really have a chance? Chu Yang's heart suddenly calmed down. He was as calm as a 1,000-year-old ancient pond, without a trace of fluctuation. Fear these negative effects wouldn't help at all. They would only make his heart more chaotic and he would have less chance of winning and even less chance of survival. Only when he didn't panic would there be hope. While Chu Yang was calculating in his heart, he didn't show it on his face. Zhuqiu Yunfu quietly came to Chu Yang's side in an extremely secretive way. He looked into the distance with his hands behind his back. He secretly used a secret voice transmission and said, Brother Chu, if the situation isn't good later, we'll try our best to create an opportunity. You take Miss Mo and Princess Z and leave first. We can't create more than two opportunities. You must seize them. Chu Yang smiled and said, What kind of tactic is this? Do you want me to be a deserter? Zhuqiu Yunfu smiled and said, Brother Chu should know that I don't mean that. And the situation now is very dangerous and bad. Even though it's only 1,000 miles away from our base with these demon soldiers blocking the way, it's no different from looking at thousands of rivers and mountains. We can only look at it but not reach it. Chu Yang said lightly, Why can't we look at it but not reach it? Is it the mentality of a tribulation to be afraid before the battle? Didn't you all face enemies stronger than you all back then? Do you all have the same mentality? And your big brother, did he abandon you all during the battle back then? Zhuqiu Yunfu's body shook. After a long while he said, No matter what kind of strong enemy we face, we'll always live and die together. We'll never leave each other. Chu Yang nodded and said decisively, Then what else is there to say? Zhuqiu Yunfu said quietly, Times are different from the past. It's really not a wise move to sacrifice yourself for nothing. Chu Yang said lightly, Where the heart is at peace, where the righteousness is. Zhuqiu Yunfu didn't say anything else and only sighed. Chu Yang changed the topic and said in a deep voice, The closest ones are parents, the closest ones are husband and wife, the most reliable ones are brothers. He didn't use a voice transmission to say this. Even though his voice wasn't loud, everyone heard it and turned to look at him. Zhuqiu Yunfu was dumbfounded. Oh. I heard that this kind of thing often happens. Chu Yang said calmly, When a child is beaten, scolded and bullied by others outside, he can endure all the pain and humiliation. But one day he's scolded harshly by his parents in his own home. Because of this, he develops a boundless hatred for his parents. He even runs away from home in anger and doesn't return home for many years. Zhuqiu Yunfu smiled bitterly. Everyone else also looked thoughtful. To others he can resign himself to adversity and fight back unyieldingly. But to his own family he can develop a boundless hatred just because of a few words. Why is this? Chu Yang said softly, As the saying goes, the deeper the love, the more the blame. Parents treat their children this way and vice versa. Because the other party is the person closest to them, the hurt from the person closest to them is the most unbearable, unforgettable and indelible. Zhuoqiu Yunfu was still smiling bitterly. There was a complicated look in his eyes. So, back then, there were some things that you brothers or at least you think tanks should be able to react to quickly. But you still couldn't figure it out. Because that hurt is the deepest. The so-called heart-wrenching pain is nothing more than that. Chu Yang said, I shouldn't have said these words before the big battle. But, instead of letting you fight with such a knot in your heart, and facing an enemy that is almost unrivaled, I might as well say it out loud, and let you truly understand what happened back then. You will have to face what you have to face. It's just like your parents. They gave birth to you and painstakingly raised you. Even if they verbally say that they want to throw you away and regret giving birth to you, so what? How do they actually treat you? Chu Yang faintly smiled. Isn't it the same for brothers? Since you've been through life and death together for a long time, and have been through a sea of fire and a mountain of knives together for a long time, then, the reason why there are misunderstandings and hatred is because they are the people you care about the most. Because you care, you misunderstand. Because you care, you hate. Because you care, you won't forgive. You won't think of forgiving. Chu Yang said slowly. Everyone sighed in unison. They could only look gloomy. And they looked at Chu Yang with a complicated look in their eyes. Yes, what he said was right. But the misunderstanding had been formed, and the people were gone. Nothing is absolute in this world. Maybe they didn't die. Chu Yang looked quietly at the extraterrestrial demons on the mountaintop and said, seemingly intentionally or unintentionally, the countless extraterrestrial demon army was slowly descending under the leadership of the two kings. It was like a boundless dark cloud that covered the sky was descending from the sky. The atmosphere became even more tense. But Chu Yang's words were like thunder and lightning that could completely shatter this boundless dark cloud. It exploded in everyone's hearts and was deafening. At this moment, so many high-level saints felt as if they were struck by lightning. They felt dizzy. Maybe they didn't die? What did this mean? Probably, it meant, boss didn't die. Boss didn't die. Chapter 2462. In that instant, everyone completely forgot that there was an invincible enemy in front of them. They only felt that they were seeing stars. Waves of indescribable ecstasy rose from their hearts and they could no longer suppress it. Especially those few think tanks. After they had guessed and confirmed Chu Yang's identity, the weight of Chu Yang's words had already risen to an unparalleled height. They should have been the most suspicious few because they were the think tanks. They had the highest intelligence and were the most scheming. But now, when all the brothers were still in ecstasy and half-doubting, they had already believed in Chu Yang completely. Because they could not believe in Chu Yang, but they would definitely believe in the Tribulation Sword Master. They would believe in every word he said. Just like back then, they believed in their own boss. Because they did not believe in their own boss, it led to the nightmare that had haunted them for tens of thousands of years. And they would definitely not make such a mistake again. And a kind of belief began to rise. If boss is really not dead, then all the more I cannot die. I want to see him. I want to admit my mistakes to him and express my repentance. I must live on, to see boss. And just as this shock and excitement rose, an untimely voice had already sounded. It carried a hint of arrogance and condescension. Gold-robed heavenly guards are indeed extraordinary. After tens of thousands of miles of breakout, all of you are still unharmed and in perfect condition. Gold-robed heavenly guards indeed. Seeing them in person is even better than hearing about them. This seemed to be full of praise, but the arrogance and haughtiness in his bones seemed to be innate and natural. It was as if his words should make the gold-robed heavenly guards, as the people involved, feel extremely touched and overwhelmed by the favor, and shed tears of gratitude. That was the aura of someone who had been in a high position for a long time. Because he had been in a high position for a long time, he had cultivated the aura of someone who had been in a high position for a long time. Just as Ji Huitian was about to speak, Zhuoqiu Yunfu had already stopped him and stepped forward. Facing such a powerful enemy, even talking to him required wisdom. With Ji Huitian's recklessness, if a single sentence or even a single word was too extreme, it would be interpreted by them to mean something else and expose their side's true strength. The gains would not make up for the losses. Golden-robed heavenly guard is just a term of endearment. We don't deserve such praise. However, may I ask which of the 8 heavenly demon kings are the 2 heavenly demon kings who came this time? Zhuoqiu Yuncho's voice was clear, and there was a faint sense of confidence in it. It was a kind of conceit that came from having absolute confidence in oneself. The two celestial demon kings looked at each other in surprise. Then one of them smiled from the bottom of his heart and said, "I am the current flying demon king Tenjin Fujin." The other said, "I am the lord of spirit demons Kurai Fuku. It's an honor to meet you." Zuichio Yunsho nodded. "Your excellencies have come here personally. I believe you must have made up your mind not to let us return safely?" Tenjin Fujin said calmly, "Indeed. Once the golden-robed heavenly guards enter the first bridge, they will be too much of a hindrance to us. Although eliminating you guys won't be of much help to our attack on the entire Heaven Imperial Court, and I believe Cloud Master will still send other people to guard us. However, your rash attack this time has given us an extremely rare opportunity. Since you guys have come to our territory, it would be inexcusable if we don't destroy you." Zuichio Yunsho said sharply, "Your territory? When have we ever been to your territory? This is Purple Cloud Heaven. It's ours. It will always be ours. It will never become yours. We're just walking on our own territory and killing some invaders along the way." Zuichio Yunsho's voice was stern. Kurai Fuku laughed mockingly and said, "Didn't you say it? At least now it's our people who have taken over this place. What about your people? Other than the dozens of you, where are the others?" Zuichio Yunsho's expression didn't change at all. He said calmly, "Invading is never something to be proud of. You have to know that your life is not destined to be yours. Even if it's temporarily yours, it's just an illusion. One day you'll lose it again." Tenjin Fujin smiled faintly. "Possessing it temporarily is possessing it. It doesn't mean it won't last forever. Most importantly, invading gives me the great pleasure of conquering. Young man, perhaps you understand my words, perhaps you don't, but one thing is certain, and that is, whether it's you humans or our Heavenly Emperor clan, from the beginning to the end, the history is essentially a history of invasion. This world has always been one of invasion. It was like that in the past, right now, and in the future. It will be like that forever. No matter what realm it is, it will always be, only those who have the ability to conquer it." The Lord of the Flying Demons was elegant and calm. He said, "The prosperity of a race will inevitably be accompanied by the destruction of another race. This has been the general trend since ancient times, and there will be no exceptions. Now, our race has the ability and strength to occupy this part of the world. Then the Purple Cloud Heavens will be ours. It doesn't matter if it's temporary or an illusion, it's the truth. As for when it will be yours," Tenjin Fujin said calmly, "that will have to wait until you've chased all of our people out. Perhaps only then will it be meaningful to say this." Zuichio Yunsho nodded slowly. "That's right. On this battlefield, right and wrong are never that important. However, you have to pay for the heinous crimes you've committed after coming in. No one will be able to escape." Kurai Fuku's face was filled with a mocking smile. He looked at Zuichio Yunfu with a mocking gaze and said, "But if we win in the end and become the victors, then all of our people who have killed humans in this war will become heroes. Their souls will enter the shrine and be worshipped by our ancestors." Zuichio Yunfu said sharply, "Enter the shrine? Ah. That's just the name of the latrine in our heaven palace. What a coincidence, what a coincidence. So there really is such a coincidence." As he said this, the atmosphere in this space suddenly fell into a deathly silence. Zuichio Yunfu's words were equivalent to opening the prelude to the war. Previously he had been stalling for time. He was waiting for the news that their leader was still alive to create an explosive excitement among his brothers. And that explosive excitement would turn into a high-spirited battle prowess. At the same time, it was a belief that they would not die. As long as this belief was formed, there would be hope today. And now, at this very moment, he could clearly feel that the belief, "I cannot die," was already formed. It was already forming. It was already about to turn into a storm. And what Zuichio Yunfu wanted to do now was to fully ignite this war when this spiritual storm arrived. He wanted to turn this unparalleled battle strength and unprecedented tribulation energy into the purest battle strength and enter this war. Therefore, when he sensed the emotions of his brothers, he simply threw out this sentence. "Enter the shrine, it's just the name of our latrine." It was undoubtedly trampling on the other party's million years of spiritual belief and pride. To the heavenly demons, this was a great humiliation that no one would allow or accept. The two heavenly demon kings' faces darkened at the same time. Their previous calmness and elegance instantly disappeared. They quietly looked at Zuichio Yunfu. Zuichio Yunfu did not show any signs of weakness. He smiled faintly and raised his head to look at them. He said seriously, "So coincidences are this scary?" But what I said is true. Really, it's just the name of our latrine. Fujian Tingin's eyes suddenly emitted a violent light. He shouted in a deep voice, "Die!" A ray of black light suddenly burst out from his eyes. It actually condensed into a substance and rushed towards Wuxia Yunfu at an extremely fast speed. Ji Huitian shouted loudly. His body and sword became one. His entire person and his sword turned into a flickering storm and met this ray of black light. Poof! A muffled sound rang out. After this clash, Ji Huitian's sword light scattered. He retreated a few steps and landed on the ground. His entire face was flushed red. Ji Huitian actually had to use all his strength to resist the ray of black light that shot out from Fujian Tingin's eyes. Although he succeeded in neutralizing the opponent's attack, he was forced to retreat and was even almost injured. What kind of frightening cultivation was this? Everyone was shocked to see this scene. Without exception, all of them turned pale with fright. They had long heard that the 8 heavenly demon kings of the heavenly demons were super experts on the same level as Diho. However, no one had actually fought with an expert of Diho's level before. Therefore, they had never thought that Diho's level was actually at such a terrifying level. Chu Yang frowned and made a prompt decision. He couldn't drag this on any longer. Otherwise, once the 2 heavenly demon kings took the initiative to attack, there would definitely be casualties on his side. Even if the 2 heavenly demon kings didn't take the initiative to attack, everyone's courage and confidence would gradually disappear under such a demonic aura. At this moment, the 2 heavenly demon kings already said coldly, "Move." One could imagine that the other word that wasn't spoken out and the previous word together was an order, "Move." However, at this moment, a clear and melodious sword sound suddenly rang out. An extremely bright ray of light appeared in the sky without any warning. Like a bolt of lightning, it suddenly cut through the endless haze. The entire purple cloud heavens was almost illuminated by this dazzling sword light. A biting cold murderous aura suddenly surged out like a sudden storm and engulfed the entire sky. This murderous aura caused the expressions of the 2 great heavenly demon kings to change. That was a merciless murderous aura that wouldn't even frown if it slaughtered the entire world. Merciless sword aura. A voice with a domineering aura recited, "Heavenly tribulation, it's lonely at the top." Chapter 2463. Chu Yang understood very well. If he was heavily injured, he could recover instantly. As long as he didn't die, he could recover immediately. However, if the brothers behind him were heavily injured, it would be impossible for them to recover. They didn't have such convenient conditions. So Chu Yang could only face it head-on. He immediately felt that his internal organs were about to rupture and his body was about to collapse. The tribulation sword almost flew out of his hand. As his vision turned black, a big mouthful of blood rushed to his throat. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that if he really spat out this mouthful of blood, Chu Yang's vital energy would collapse. Not only would his internal injuries explode, but his body would also disintegrate. Chu Yang shut his mouth tightly. A heavy pill and a mouthful of blood were swallowed back at the same time. Life and death in an instant. As the heavy pill entered his throat, life reappeared. As for the tribulation space, with Chu Yang's full output, the spiritual energy, medicinal power, purple crystal power, medicinal power, yin and yang power, as well as the vitality of the spring of life filled the tribulation space. With the momentum of a river bursting its banks, it forcefully poured into Chu Yang's dantian with an earth-shattering momentum. Chu Yang's body, Chu Yang's meridians. Chu Yang instantly went from a severely injured state to a state of rapid recovery. One ray of cold light pierces 10,000 fathoms. The remaining power of that move continued to carry Chu Yang and the others forward like lightning. However, he had only advanced a short distance. They met with another obstacle. The barrier this time was different from the previous ones. This time, the barrier was as grand as a mountain and was almost unshakable. It was as if there was an insurmountable mountain in front of them. It was solemn and unshakable. They couldn't pass through here anymore. Immediately, Chu Yang clearly felt that the sword energy that was advancing forward suddenly met with an impenetrable obstacle. Looking closely, it was Kurai Fuku's mountain-like body. And those 2 hands were like 2 complete mountain ranges, one left and one right, slapping down from above. Immovable like a mountain. As expected, even heaven and earth can obstruct me here. It can also be cut off. One ray of cold light pierces 10,000 fathoms. To be able to force Fujian Tianyuan back in one move, one could imagine its power, but its momentum was exhausted. As the saying goes, a single ray of cold light pierces 10,000 fathoms, and it had reached the point where it could no longer pose any threat to Kurai Fuku. Just as he forced back a Heaven Fiend King, another one came forward. Chu Yang's eyes were about to split open. He opened his mouth and madly sucked in a breath. With this breath, he sucked in almost all of the surrounding air mixed with the stench of blood. For a time, the area within a radius of several thousand feet seemed to have become a vacuum. Chu Yang could clearly feel that his lungs were about to explode at this moment. Then he suddenly opened his mouth. Suddenly he let out a desperate roar. His eyes suddenly turned crimson red. Sword of Calamity. Chu Yang screamed with all his might. His voice was so shrill that it seemed as if it was going to shatter the entire sky. It also seemed as if his internal organs were going to be spewed out. Slaughter the world. So what? It was the ultimate move that combined all of Calamity Sword's offensive moves. Finally, it exploded in Chu Yang's hands again. Extreme Eruption. An extremely sharp sword aura shot out like a long dragon. With a mighty and unstoppable momentum, it seemed as if it was rushing forward towards the end of the world. If it was a human in front, it would kill. If it was a demon in front, it would slay a demon. If it was a sun in front, it would dim the sun. If it was a world in front, it would destroy the world. Wherever the sword aura reached, the air in the entire space suddenly boiled intensely at this moment. It was like a pot of boiling porridge. All around, the heaven fiends that were attacking within a radius of 1,000 feet screamed at the same time. In reality, they weren't really touched by the sword aura, but just the sharpness of it was already unbearable for them. Those that were close to it directly turned into ashes like snow being poured into boiling soup, disappearing without a trace. All the heaven fiends within a radius of 3,000 feet also screamed at the same time and covered their eyes. That dazzling light almost made them all blind at this moment. It was as if they were blind. Their eyes stung as if thousands of silver needles had pierced into them at the same time. At this moment, the blazing sun in the sky seemed to have lost its light and was extremely dim in comparison. The brilliance of this sword was above heaven and earth, covering the past and present. Although it wasn't known if this sword was the last, it was definitely unprecedented. Because ever since the Heavenly Imperial Court existed, such a sword had never appeared. Domineering and sharp, it had reached the extreme. Even the Heaven Fiend King Fujin Tianyuan, who was recuperating at the side, couldn't help but be dumbfounded when he saw this sword with his own eyes. There was actually such a sword in the world. His confidence that Kurai Fuku would definitely be able to intercept Chu Yang and the rest was completely shaken at this moment. Then he felt that something was wrong. Ignoring the pain in his chest, he quickly flew up and was obviously going to turn into a gust of wind to intercept Chu Yang again. But it was already too late. In a battle between experts, a slight difference was already the difference between heaven and earth. Chu Yang gritted his teeth, his face full of desperation and ferocity. Together with his sword and that unparalleled sword light, he crashed into Kurai Fuku's body without hesitation. On the body that was as huge as a mountain. Behind him, the huge sword formed by the 13 people followed Chu Yang. None of them hesitated at all. Without hesitation, they all crashed into Kurai Fuku's body. There was no turning back. Ouch. Kurai Fuku let out a scream filled with shock. He could clearly feel an intense pain coming from his chest. Before he could even react, he saw a huge hole in his chest. A transparent hole appeared on his body that hadn't been hurt for God knows how many years. And Chu Yang and the rest, who were supposed to be intercepted, had actually disappeared without a trace. At this moment, his hands that were suspended high in the air didn't have time to slap down. He was only a short distance away from where he wanted to slap. Immovable Mountain was indeed an unparalleled defensive technique. But the only flaw of this technique was that its attack speed was relatively slow. Kurai Fuku's Immovable Mountain was indeed as stable as a mountain and difficult to shake. But Chu Yang didn't want to shake it completely from the start. Under the premise that I don't have the strength to move a mountain, it's impossible. But I can try to punch a hole in this mountain to pass through. Using extreme sharpness and a fierce charge, I can directly punch a hole in your Immovable Mountain body. That's still possible. Immovable Mountain had another weakness. Turning the entire body into a mountain, it was extremely majestic. But, at the same time, you're also scattering your strength. Chu Yang gathered all his strength and attacked a single point, a sharp point attack. And it was mixed with an extreme speed that exceeded the speed of light, and a kind of unflinching determination to succeed or die. Finally, a huge hole appeared on Kurai Fuku's body. Chu Yang brought the sword formed by the 14 people and pierced through with a boom. Just as they pierced through, the 14 people cried out and spat out a mouthful of blood. The impact of the collision just now could be said to be a complete head-on collision. The intensity of the collision was several times greater than that of Fuku's Tianyuan. And this wave of extremely fierce impact, not to mention Chuyang alone, even if Chuyang activated the entire power of the Calamity Sword formation and neutralized it, he still wouldn't be able to withstand it. In the end, everyone was injured and the courtyard was filled with injured soldiers. Luckily, Mo Qingwu was prepared. She gave everyone a heavy pill and put it in their mouths. At this time it came in handy. With a gulp, the heavy pill entered their stomachs. Their situation immediately turned for the better, and they had the strength to continue fighting. Although the price for this fight was not low, in that instant, the long sword that Chu Yang and the others had transformed into successfully broke through Kurai Fuku's interception. They still maintained the extreme speed of, what harm is there in slaughtering the entire world? With a flash of meteor light, they charged courageously into the ranks of the heavenly devil horde behind Kurai Fuku. Before Kurai Fuku could react and was still shocked by his injuries, and before Fuku's Tianyuan could react, he didn't have time to form a gale and counterattack again. Chu Yang and the others rushed forward at least 20,000 feet like a stream of light. Only at this moment did a white smoke appear behind the 14 people with a swoosh, along with a burst of sonic booms. This was extreme speed burning the air and creating sonic booms due to the friction. This kind of terrifying speed and facing the obstruction of 1,000,000 soldiers was simply inconceivable. And until now, the ultimate momentum of, what harm is there in slaughtering the entire world, had not completely disappeared. They were still rushing forward. Along the way, all the heavenly devil horde who dared to come up and block, or who couldn't dodge in time, were all turned into pieces at the first moment. They didn't even have time to scream. They didn't even see the enemy's shadow. They only saw a light in front of their eyes and seemed to feel a stabbing pain. Then in the next moment they didn't know anything, their souls were destroyed. In just a moment, Chu Yang and the others had already rushed to the top of the mountain with a whoosh. And at this time, the gale formed by Fuku's Tianyuan had time to form again. Kurai Fuku's body had also returned to the size of a normal person, and the hole in his chest was also healing. But his face was extremely pale. Obviously, the accidental recovery this time had consumed a lot of his energy. The two heavenly demon kings had never expected that their joint attack would be broken through by the enemy, and that the enemy would leave just like that. And, in terms of cultivation, none of the enemy was as good as them. What made the two heavenly devil kings even angrier was that even if all of the enemy's powers were added together, they still wouldn't be able to match up to them. But in the end they just broke through and left. Chapter 2464. Chase. The two heavenly demon kings turned around in anger and humiliation. It was almost as if the other party's heart was about to explode from anger at this moment. There's something strange about their sword, Fujin Tengen said as he chased. Very strange. Very strange. That's right. Kurai Fuku gritted his teeth. A large part of the problem lies with that sword. When I used Immovable Mountain, even the Heavenly Emperor's Imperial Heaven Sword might not be able to cut open a bloody wound on my body. However, under the other party's sword, it was able to cut open a huge hole in my body. That sword is definitely their trump card. Snatch it. We must snatch it. The two heavenly demon kings saw greed in each other's eyes. There's one more thing. Fujin Tengen said, it's really strange. In the fight just now, when they broke through my hurricane seal, I clearly felt that they had used up a considerable amount of their life force to break through my barrier. Furthermore, that moment of weakness was definitely not a deliberate show of weakness. It was completely meaningless. Fujin Tengen frowned. Logically speaking, even you and I would be in a temporary state of weakness after using such a forbidden technique. However, the opponent was able to follow up with an even more powerful technique. This is absolutely illogical. The two of them discussed as they chased. This is really inconceivable. Kurai Fuku smiled bitterly. Isn't that so? It's because of this that we fell for it. If we had known that this would happen, we would have been prepared. We would have gone all out from the start and attacked together. How could they have slipped through our fingers? In a hopeless situation, when everyone thought that they were exhausted or at least had no more trump cards left, they suddenly burst out with a decisive sword attack that far exceeded the upper limit of their known strength. This is the most terrifying thing. Fujin Tengen smiled bitterly. This matter is even more important than that sword. Yes, that's right. That young man who didn't stand out at all in the intelligence reports. He's actually their most important character. They really hit it well. Kurai Fuku's expression was heavy. The two heavenly demon kings chased with all their might. They were getting closer and closer to Chuyang and the rest. Chuyang seemed to be fighting with his life on the line. What's the harm in slaughtering the entire world? After the sword move broke through the barrier, the remaining momentum brought everyone flying 30,000 feet away. Then it gradually slowed down. At this moment, everyone had already broken through the heavenly demon's tight encirclement. They came to the top of the mountain. Up ahead, there were only a few Sky Fiend soldiers. However, Chuyang spat out a big mouthful of blood at the same time as the sword momentum dissipated. He almost fell into a coma in an instant. The aftereffects of the two extreme outbursts could no longer be suppressed. Although he had the heavy pill and the tribulation space, which were two powerful sources of replenishment, he still couldn't recover immediately. He needed a relative buffer time. Mo Qingwu and Zi Shiqing each held Chu Yang's hand. They supported Chuyang and gave him some leeway. As for Ji Hui and Jun Wei Ling, the two of them used their twin swords combination to open up a path and continue to advance rapidly. However, in this way the speed of their advancement was almost twice as fast as when they used the sword technique to bring everyone along. At this speed, not only could they not maintain the distance that Chuyang had pulled apart earlier, they were gradually being chased by the two demon kings from behind. A gust of wind rose behind them. The two heavenly demon kings had already caught up. The two of them turned into rainbows like shooting stars across the sky. They were about to catch up. The other party's speed could be said to be extremely fast, but their movements and postures were still so elegant. The opportunity that Chuyang had created to escape was about to be taken back by the other party again. The Tribulation brothers were all unwilling to accept this. The Sword Master spared no expense to bring us away. Are we going to implicate the Sword Master and die together with him? Ji Huitian panted heavily. His eyes were bloodshot, but he had nowhere to exert his strength. This battle made the usually arrogant golden-robed heavenly guards truly witness the terror of the heavenly demon king level super experts. Everyone knew that as long as they were caught, they would die without a doubt. And they would all be wiped out. Ji Huitian roared, "I'll go back and block them. You guys go first." After saying that, he was about to rush back. Ji Huitian had already made up his mind. No matter what, he couldn't let the Tribulation Sword Master die here. If he died, as long as the Tribulation Sword Master was still here, the brothers would have a backbone. At least, they would have spiritual sustenance. The other brothers also had the same plan, so they didn't dissuade him. Everyone even had this plan in their hearts. If Ji Huitian was the first to die, then they would be the second to bring up the rear. Even if they had to sacrifice all their brothers here, they couldn't let the Tribulation Sword Master die here. Especially the Tribulation Sword, they definitely couldn't let it fall into the hands of the heavenly demons. Chuyang struggled and shouted, "Don't go, there's still a chance." Mo Qingwu reached out and grabbed Ji Huitian. She still rushed forward with her head lowered. In the blink of an eye, just as the two heavenly demon kings were about to give chase, they suddenly stopped without any warning, as if they had discovered something strange. Then, in the air they began to bombard the area with seemingly aimless explosions. The reason was actually very simple: the divine spirit of the tribulation. The divine spirit of the tribulation was the key to Chu Yang's plan this time, and it was also an indispensable part. With the divine spirit of the tribulation as the final trump card, it could at least buy some time for Chuyang and the others. Sure enough, the two heavenly demon kings met with a completely unexpected obstruction. They roared and attacked at the same time. The divine spirit of the tribulation was also thinking of using all its strength to fight with all its might to verify the realizations it had in the past few days. It wanted to see if it could close the gap between it and the experts behind DE. So it didn't dodge at all. It turned into a cloud of gray fog and went up to fight. However, after Fujin Tianyuan attacked, he immediately withdrew. He let Kurai Fuku fight with the divine spirit of the tribulation alone. He ignored the divine spirit of the tribulation and forcibly broke through the gray fog's obstruction. He descended rapidly from the sky and his target was Chuyang and the others. With another long roar, a strange guy that looked like a cat and a tiger suddenly appeared to intercept them. Brother Hu. At this crucial moment, Brother Hu finally appeared. He went up against Fujin Tianyuan. Chuyang and the others took advantage of this critical moment to rush forward. Chuyang raised his head and swallowed 2 heavy pills. This was the first time he had swallowed so many heavy pills in a battle. There were already as many as 1 in total. However, Chuyang had no other choice. The most important thing now was to recover as soon as possible. Otherwise, Without the full speed of the Tribulation Sword, no matter how brilliant the previous battle results were, it was still meaningless. Everyone would still die here. The distance from the first bridge. But it was only 300 miles. But these 300 miles. It was as if they were separated by an infinite boundary, so unreachable. Only by using the Tribulation Sword at full speed could they cross this boundary. Brother Hu and the divine spirit of the Tribulation would definitely not be able to stop the two for too long. They would be defeated. The divine spirit of the Tribulation was not a big problem. It would not be a problem for him to escape unscathed. But Brother Hu could not. At least, he would definitely be seriously injured. Being able to hold on for 1 or 2 breaths was already his limit. Sure enough, with a whoosh, a small yellow object flew over at high speed. The moment it fell into Chu Yang's arms, it was already completely unconscious. The current Brother Hu was still not a match for the Heavenly Demon King. After using all his strength to force the other party back, he had already fainted from exhaustion. He used the last bit of strength to escape back, but he had no strength to move at all and fell into a deep coma. In fact, he couldn't even open his eyes. There was also a bang in the distance. There was also a roar and a strange cry. Chu Yang felt that there was an additional weak soul in his body. It was the divine spirit of the Tribulation. Although he had an immortal body and his cultivation had improved greatly, his real strength was still a distance away from the Heavenly Demon King who had reached the level of Emperor. At this moment, although he held on for a while, he was still completely defeated. Even his spiritual fog-like body was almost shattered. He fled back to Chu Yang's side immediately, but he had already lost the ability to fight. At this point, the 2 trump cards that Chu Yang had hidden all along had lost their battle power at the same time. However, the time that the divine spirit of the Tribulation and Brother Hu had bought was only 2 breaths worth of time. Chu Yang and the others were already running for their lives, but now they were still at least 200 miles away from the first bridge, and the Heavenly Demon King who was chasing behind them was almost within reach. I only need 1 more breath's worth of time. Then I can activate the Tribulation Sword again. Chu Yang was extremely angry. Heavens, are you also so stingy with this 1 breath's worth of time? After Fujin Tianyuan and Kurai Fuku repelled the divine spirit of the Tribulation and Brother Hu, they did not waste any more time to catch their breath and caught up. The 2 Heavenly Demon Kings were experienced people. How could they not know that a long delay would bring more trouble? For such an opponent, if they could get rid of him at the first moment, they must do so at the first moment. Even if it was just 1 more sentence, 1 more word, it could cause unnecessary changes. The 2 Heavenly Demon Kings obviously realized one thing. These golden-robed heavenly guards might still improve, but the space for improvement was already very slow. However, the real biggest threat now was that little guy who called himself the Tribulation Sword Master. That young man's potential was truly terrifying. If he was allowed to live and grow, and one day his cultivation was able to take another step forward, coupled with the peerless sword in his hand, even a powerhouse like him might not be a match for him. If that was the case, wouldn't it mean that another strong enemy had appeared? An enemy that was even more terrifying than the Purple Cloud Heavenly Emperor back then. Such an enemy should be eliminated in the bud first. The Heavenly Demon Clan would definitely not allow such a thing to happen because to the Heavenly Demon Clan, this was undoubtedly a disaster. Chu Yang, the Tribulation Sword Master, must be killed. After I finished writing the first chapter, I uploaded it and then buried myself in writing the second chapter. When I finished writing the second chapter and logged into the author's platform, I realized that I had drawn a lot. The first chapter was still being reviewed and was not published successfully. I hurriedly cancelled it and uploaded it again. Only then was it published successfully. Oh, tears streaming down my face. You can't blame me for this. Chapter 2465. Back then, the Purple Firmament Heavenly Emperor had killed 2 Heavenly Demon Kings by himself. They were the 2 commanders of the hundreds of millions of otherworldly demons that had attacked the Purple Firmament Heavens. Then, he self-detonated his wounded body, making the other 3 Heavenly Demon Kings who had come as reinforcements die with him. It was equivalent to one person dragging 5 Heavenly Demon Kings to the Yellow Springs together. If another Purple Firmament Heavenly Emperor appeared, an expert even more terrifying than him, what would happen? To the Heavenly Demon Clan, that was something they didn't even dare to think about. And this Calamity Sword Master in front of them clearly already had that kind of potential. Since they had the chance and ability to kill this kind of person, when would they wait? They were about to catch up. Ji Huitian and the rest tried their best to run forward, but they had already made up their minds. As long as you catch up, I'll turn around and self-detonate. Even if I can't kill you, I can at least stop you for a while. Many of the past Calamity brothers had already started to move, and their bodies gradually showed signs of swelling. That was clearly the prelude to circulating their divine techniques at full strength and preparing to self-detonate. Although Wuxia, Jianghu and the rest saw it, they didn't say anything. From the looks of the current situation, there was only one way left to escort the Calamity Sword Master and the Purple Firmament Heavenly Emperor's princess back. Boss, we've let you down, but we're willing to die for the Calamity Sword today. We're willing to die for the Calamity Sword Master. No complaints or regrets. Where are you going? The two heavenly demon kings descended from the sky, and their calm and dignified voices sounded with an indescribable cruelty. Jianghu Tian and the rest were about to turn around and self-detonate to block the strong beam. But they were very surprised to hear a soft shout, and a clear voice shouted, "Eternal Purple Firmament." Suddenly there was a burst of golden light between heaven and earth. A seal as glorious as the heavens turned into a huge mountain and descended from the sky. It fiercely smashed towards the two heavenly demon kings. In the middle, the words "Eternal Purple Firmament" flickered with a strange light that illuminated heaven and earth, as if from ancient times until now. Together they illuminated brightly. High up in the sky, yellow light suddenly flickered, and the atmosphere was solemn and dignified. Instantly, it filled the universe. Suddenly the sky was filled with multicolored light, and the words "Eternal Purple Firmament" appeared. It stood tall in the sky, motionless. The entire purple cloud heaven suddenly fell into silence at this moment. The sound of a pin dropping could be heard. Only the two celestial demon kings, Fujin Tengen and Kurai Fuku, screamed as if they had seen a ghost. Purple Cloud Celestial Emperor? Suddenly, his eyes flashed with disbelief and extreme fear. At the same time, they stood still and faced the attack with all their might. The Purple Jade Seal. The two great celestial devil kings feared neither heaven nor earth, but towards the Purple Firmament Heavenly Emperor who slaughtered the celestial devils until their blood flowed like rivers back then, they had a kind of fear that came from the depths of their bones. Both of them had participated in the invasion of the Purple Cloud Heavens back then and had witnessed the might of the Purple Cloud Heavenly Emperor with their own eyes. He was very familiar with the power of the Purple Firmament Imperial Jade Seal. It was also because of that incident that he was scared out of his wits. At this moment, seeing the Purple Cloud Imperial Jade Seal in the depths of his memory again after 1,000,000 years, the fear that was deeply embedded in his soul suddenly rose. The first thing that came to mind was that there was no need to resist. Instead, it was an escape. But it was too late. The Purple Firmament Imperial Jade Seal brought with it a brilliant aura as it came crashing down. Boom! It smashed into the combined defense of the two heavenly demon kings. The words "Eternal Purple Firmament" suddenly shone brightly, straight to the sky. Boom! The two great heavenly demon kings combined their strength to resist, but half of their bodies were smashed into the ground. However, they looked at each other and were genuinely surprised. Why was the Eternal Purple Firmament, this time so weak? To be honest, the two heavenly demon kings were already prepared to be injured or even seriously injured. Just by looking at the aura of the Eternal Purple Firmament, they felt that as long as they could stay alive, it would already be a great fortune. The two great heavenly demon kings couldn't be blamed for being too cautious. One must know that this move, Eternal Purple Firmament, could be said to have become famous in a single battle back then. Several super experts at the level of heavenly demon kings had lost their lives because of this move, and the few heavenly demon kings who died were not inferior to the two of them in terms of strength. They were even stronger than them. Therefore, when facing this famous move, how could they not be wary and fearful of it? But what they didn't expect was that they were actually not injured at all, and even caused the sudden appearance of the Purple Firmament Imperial Jade Seal to suffer a great reverse impact. On the other side, there was an inexplicable muffled groan. The white fog suddenly dispersed and turned into the beautiful figure of Zi Sheqing in white. She fell from midair unconsciously. In her hand, the Purple Firmament Imperial Jade Seal had already turned back into a small seal. She held it tightly in her palm. One of her jade-like arms was already completely shattered. She was severely injured. With a long roar, Chuyang leaped up and caught Zi Sheqing. He had already stuffed a heavy pill into her mouth. Then he put her into the space of tribulation to recuperate. It was precisely because of Zi Sheqing's desperate attack that Chuyang had won a crucial moment of time. Although Zi Sheqing had the bloodline of the Heavenly Emperor of Purple Firmament and could activate the Purple Firmament Imperial Jade Seal, she was far from being able to unleash its full power. Moreover, the attack just now didn't borrow the power of the Tribulation formation at all. It was purely based on Zi Sheqing's own cultivation and the power of the Purple Firmament Imperial Jade Seal. Therefore, the injuries caused by the reverse impact this time were exceptionally severe. Other than one of her arms being instantly shattered, her internal organs were also ruptured. She was seriously injured to the point of death. Even this injury was caused by the two great heavenly demon kings' fear of the name, Eternal Purple Firmament. In that fight just now, most of their power was reserved for defense, and only 10% or 20% of their power was instinctively used to counterattack. Otherwise, Zi Sheqing would have already been smashed into pieces and died. Chu Yang roared with extreme heartache. Tribulation Sword Formation. The Tribulation Sword Formation that was already slightly scattered just now instantly took shape again. Chu Yang leaped up and soared light sword. The two great heavenly demon kings roared and pulled themselves out of the ground. They pounced over like lightning. Now, not only that young man had to die, but also that person who could use the eternal purple firmament. They definitely couldn't let such a person grow. Such an existence was definitely a super existence that had the potential to destroy the heavenly demon clan. She had to die. Especially, the eternal purple firmament could only be used by those with the bloodline of the purple firmament. That woman was definitely a descendant of the heavenly emperor of purple firmament. There was such a person. To the remnants of the purple firmament, she was an unparalleled spiritual pillar. She had to be eradicated. The distance between the two parties was only 1,000 feet. To experts of such cultivation, this distance could be covered in a flash. Although Chu Yang had recovered some of his battle power, he still didn't dare to be negligent. He shouted, "A ray of cold light?" He only said 4 words. Then the tribulation sword danced at a crazy speed. A ray of cold light pierces 10,000 feet. What harm is there in slaughtering the whole world? A sharp will buried deep will never change. A gathering of wind and clouds is the emperor. 4 ultimate sword moves were used one after another without regard for the cost and consequences. They were used at full speed just to escape. Succeed or die trying. The two great heavenly demon kings rushed over desperately. But they saw a bright flash of light in front of them. With a swoosh there were continuous sonic booms. A ray of sword light rose and went straight into the sky. It had the momentum of supporting the clouds and the sky. Then with a long tail, it was like a shooting star chasing after the moon. It instantly exceeded their line of sight. They were only half a step away or even less than half a step away. The two of them could launch a fatal attack. But with such a short distance, Chu Yang's tribulation sword showed its power again. It directly left the battlefield in a state of being one with the sword. Its speed was so fast that the two great heavenly demon kings couldn't react in time. Chase. The two great heavenly demon kings were unwilling to give up just like that. They quickly used their movement techniques and turned into 2 long rainbows, chasing after their tails. Both of them knew that once Chu Yang and the others left, they would definitely become a great threat to the extraterrestrial demon clan when they returned. Whether it was the young man who called himself the Master of Tribulation Sword or the woman who used Eternal Purple Cloud, they were both great threats to the extraterrestrial demon clan. They had to be eliminated. Even if they knew that the chances of catching up were extremely slim, they still had to chase after them with all their might. Just as they were chasing after them, suddenly, a burst of cheers erupted from the dense forest 500 kilometers behind them. This sudden sound was as violent as the sky falling and the earth cracking. Then they saw a large number of people in ragged clothes pouring out of the dense forest from afar. It was almost endless. Even with the eyesight of the two great heavenly demon kings, they couldn't tell how many people there were over there. The few people at the front had tears in their eyes. They were so excited that they couldn't control themselves. Eternal Purple Cloud. Eternal Purple Cloud. Ancient purple clouds, they were so excited that they couldn't speak. Although the power of Zi Sheqing's Purple Cloud Imperial Jade Seal wasn't very powerful, its aura was unparalleled. In an instant, it shone for thousands of kilometers and illuminated the universe. Everyone saw it. To the remnant citizens of Purple Cloud, this was equivalent to the most powerful stimulant. For a moment, it was as if their hearts were about to explode from excitement. Our Purple Cloud heavens. Our heavenly emperor of Purple Cloud. The heavenly emperor's bloodline still remained in the human world. The descendants of the heavenly emperor of this world are coming to take back Purple Cloud heavens. Endless remnant citizens of Purple Cloud rushed out of the dense forest. In an instant the whole world seemed to be filled with them. There were still countless people coming out from inside, pouring out. Such a battle array, how could there be only millions of them? Fujin Tianyuan and Kurai Fuku sighed helplessly as they looked at the enemies pouring out like a tide. Both of them were injured now and were not in a good condition to fight. The remnant citizens of Purple Cloud also had many experts. And the most important thing was, this battle was completely a one-sided battle. Especially under such special conditions, the remnant citizens of Purple Cloud's military strength now far exceeded that of the heavenly demon army present. This wasn't a situation that could be changed with just one or two super experts. The two great heavenly demon kings sighed sullenly and shouted angrily, "Retreat!" The hundreds of thousands of heavenly demon army retreated in an orderly manner like a tide. They disappeared without a trace in an extremely short time. Chapter 2466. The two celestial demon kings stood side by side at the peak of the mountain. They stood with their hands behind their backs. Looking at the incoming enemies, they sneered with disdain. If they wanted to leave, no one would be able to stop them. The Purple Cloud remnant army was about 1,000 feet away when a horn sounded. They stopped in an orderly manner. Although they were remnant citizens, they obeyed orders strictly. An elder transformed into a rainbow and arrived in a flash. He shouted, "Fujin Kurai, so it's you two demons." The two celestial demon kings snorted. The elder asked, "Who were you fighting with just now?" His expression and tone actually had some unconcealable nervousness. Feng Jian sneered and said, "Congratulations, it turns out that the Purple Firmament Heavenly Emperor back then actually still has descendants left in this world." Everyone was an expert of the same level. All the lies, deceit, and arguments were meaningless. Fujin did not try to hide it. The heavens have mercy. The elder's eyes were brimming with tears. He was trembling all over. Suddenly he roared, "The heavens have blessed Purple Cloud." With a single roar, tears streamed down his cheeks. "Unfortunately, you're still very weak." Kurai Fuku said coldly, "Your Purple Cloud princess was severely injured by my palm. I'm afraid she's not far from death." The elder sneered, "You?" Suddenly his body flashed and he rushed forward. A long rainbow suddenly appeared and only the sound of peng peng could be heard. The two of them were already fighting fiercely like two whirlwinds. After a while, the rainbow flew out again and transformed back into the elder's figure. He laughed and said, "Retreat." Millions of remnant citizens retreated at the same time calmly. They dispersed in an instant and disappeared without a trace. Kurai Fuku stood there with an ugly expression on his face. The elder's voice came from afar. "The heavens have blessed my master. The Purple Cloud Celestial Emperor's bloodline is still alive. I've confirmed it." Ah. Kurai Fuku's arm still has traces of fighting with the Purple Cloud Imperial Jade Seal. This is definitely true. The day of Purple Cloud Heaven's return is not far away. Suddenly, cheers came from all directions. There were traces of the Purple Cloud Imperial Jade Seal. This meant that the Emperor's bloodline was still alive. There were still descendants. "Let's retreat for now, preserve our strength and wait for an opportunity." The elder's voice boomed like thunder on a clear day. "When His Majesty the Celestial Emperor's Imperial Jade Seal appears in the sky above Purple Cloud Heaven once again, all the heavenly devils will be killed. Resplendent purple clouds. Kill all the sky fiends. Resplendent purple clouds." Majestic voices rose and fell from all directions, and this group of people had already retreated into the dense forest like a receding tide. In an instant, the world returned to silence. The two heavenly demon kings looked at the dense forest and remained silent for a long time. Their faces were gloomy and their eyes were malicious. "We have to get rid of these old guys first." The two of them had the same idea at the same time. Then the two heavenly demon kings turned around and left. His back view was already somewhat bleak. After all, the injuries of the two celestial demon kings were definitely not light. In addition to physical injuries, there were also psychological injuries. Whether it was the descendant of the Purple Cloud Celestial Emperor or the young man who called himself the Master of Calamity Sword, they were all serious problems. The moment Chuyang and the others stepped onto the first bridge, they felt as if they were dreaming. Especially the past generations of Tribulation brothers, they had never thought that they would actually be able to come back alive this time. When the four moves were made just now, Chuyang could be said to have exhausted himself to the extreme. If not for the fact that he didn't dare to release his last breath of vital energy, he would have immediately fallen into a deep coma. To put it bluntly, he was so tired that even breathing was strenuous. He was on the verge of fainting at any time. This situation made all the Tribulation brothers feel a kind of heartfelt shame. Back then, they had agreed that they would use their lives to protect Chu Yang and the other two on their way to and from the Purple Cloud Celestial Emperor safely. After this trip they were really safe. However, the ones who were safe were all the Tribulation brothers. Chu Yang and the other two, one was seriously exhausted and couldn't hold on at any time. The other was seriously injured and it was unknown whether he was dead or alive. Only Imo Qingwu was still in good condition. Protecting others had become being protected. This feeling was undoubtedly extremely uncomfortable. But more than that, it was a sense of belonging. There was also a sense of happiness, a long-lost feeling of happiness. Boss had never really abandoned us all along. And Calamity Sword had never left us either. We saw the Master of Calamity Sword again, saw Calamity Sword again. Whether they were exhausted or seriously injured, with the Tribulation space that was like a cheating device, countless elixirs and heavenly treasures, Chu Yang and Zi Sheqing wouldn't die no matter how close they were to death. And in these few days when they were recuperating, they were taken care of in every possible way by the Tribulation brothers. After his injuries recovered a little, Chu Yang immediately started to comprehend the experience of this battle after crossing hundreds of thousands of miles. This time he had fought with a super expert at the level of DE with real swords and spears. Compared to the battle with Yuan Tianjia back then, it was definitely not the same. The benefits to his combat attainment were naturally extraordinary. In addition to experiencing the battle experience himself, he also sparred with the Tribulation brothers at the same time. Although the cultivation of the Tribulation brothers couldn't be compared to the super experts at the level of Heavenly Demon King, any one of their strength was above Chu Yang's at this stage. In terms of sparring opponents, they were the most suitable for Chu Yang. At the same time, he waited here for Imo Tianji and Chu Lur to arrive. But after waiting and waiting, the two still didn't come. Not only did they not arrive, but there was also no news at all. In the blink of an eye, 3 months had passed. Chu Yang had more or less absorbed the gains from this battle. Tribulation's godly soul and Brother Tiger had both recovered. Minister Chu was progressing at a very fast pace. And he was also spending his days in comfort. As long as he was free, he would chat with Zi Sheqing and Imo Qingwu about small matters and small affairs, flirting with the two great beauties. He enjoyed listening to Zi Sheqing's thunderous roars and enduring the torrential beatings of the two great beauties. Seeing Imo Qingwu's face flushed red from his flirting, Minister Chu was even more elated and overjoyed. If he hadn't been worried about where Imo Tianji and Chu Lur had gone and why there was no news, Minister Chu would have been so happy that he almost forgot about home, practicing martial arts, drinking tea, tasting wine, chatting, flirting with beauties. When he had nothing to do, he could even go to the bridge and fight with the extraterrestrial demons to vent the energy he had accumulated. Where else could he find such a heavenly life? But finally on this day Minister Chu couldn't sit still anymore, because from the inside of the Heavenly Imperial Court, there was an absolutely shocking news. This news shocked Chu Yang so much that he saw stars on the spot. He almost fainted from the shock. He really couldn't sit still anymore. The moment he heard the news, he was tongue-tied and dumbfounded. Although his mouth wasn't crooked, it was almost completely cracked to the back of his ears. It wasn't laughter but shock and shock. In the face of such shocking news, Minister Chu made a prompt decision. He immediately set off and hurried back to the Heavenly Imperial Court. And Tribulation's brothers didn't persuade him to stay. The path of the Tribulation Sword Master was ultimately up to him. And now, they were shouldering the heavy responsibility of guarding the first bridge. Even if something big really happened, they couldn't leave. There was nothing more important than guarding the first bridge at the moment. And Chu Yang obviously couldn't stay here to guard the first bridge, at least not now. When I come back again, I'll definitely come back with hundreds of millions of troops and take back Purple Cloud Heavens in one fell swoop. Exterminate the extraterrestrial demons. Chu Yang's eyes flashed as he said this. That was a kind of absolute confidence. And the eyes of Tribulation's brothers were also shining. They didn't doubt at all that Chu Yang could do this. An expert who could confront the extraterrestrial demon king at the age of 20, the creator of countless miracles. There was no reason to doubt such a legend anymore. Swordmaster, please, find out the whereabouts of our boss. Zhuoqiu Yongqiuo made this request on behalf of all the brothers. Heroes won't be buried. Chu Yang nodded seriously. Everyone reluctantly said goodbye. When Chu Yang left the first bridge and climbed up a big mountain, he looked back and saw that there seemed to be a few small black dots at the misty first bridge, motionless. Those were the brothers watching the departure of the Tribulation Sword Master. The news Chu Yang received was actually very brief. The Heaven Imperial Court was in chaos. Actually, it wasn't that all the heavens and earth were in chaos. The main thing was that the big western sky, green cloud heavens, and extreme sky, these three big heavens and earth were in chaos. There was a peerless swordsman called Gu Duxing who set off a monstrous tide of anger in the big western sky. He fought a direct battle with the big western sky imperial court, and not only did he not lose, he didn't even fall into a disadvantageous position. Of course, it wasn't that Gu Duxing's strength had truly reached the level where he could confront one side of the heavens and earth by himself. It was more appropriate to say that he could confront one side of the heavens and earth with two people's strength. Because this solitary swordsman who had always liked to be alone, this time he made an exception and had a powerful ally. His ally was called Buluqing. The absolute heaven sword art that everyone in the Heaven Imperial Court coveted finally appeared in the mortal world. It joined hands with Gu Duxing's chaotic heaven sword art for the first time. Gu Duxing's chaotic heaven and Buluqing's absolute heaven, the combination of the two swords was known to be invincible under the heavens. The two joined hands to attack, shaking the big western sky. Gu Duxing called himself Emperor Duxing, starting an uprising, leading his own subordinates to officially provoke the big western sky's official power. You won't go out to battle the heavenly demon, I will. You don't deserve this position, I'll sit. This was Gu Duxing's declaration of war against the crazed sword heavenly emperor Wu Yequang. This declaration was straightforward to the extreme. It didn't have any elaborate language and it also didn't have any wanton abuse. It only had the most simple literal meaning. When the news spread out, the universe shook. Another great battle of the century was on the verge of being staged. Chapter 2467. At the same time, no one knew that while Tianji Intelligence Department was earning money, they were also providing information on this side to the other side. In fact, the information provided to the other side was even more detailed than the information provided to this side. What was even more outrageous was that the information was completely free. Under the manipulation of so many people behind the scenes, it would be inexcusable if the world wasn't in chaos. When Chu Yang and the other two saw such explosive news, they immediately decided to leave Purple Cloud Heavens. They traveled day and night and hurriedly rushed to the extreme heavens. Among the three heavens and earth, the extreme heavens was currently in the most dangerous situation. After all, the extreme heavens had a saint overseeing it. If the two sides really got into a conflict and the saint intervened, it wouldn't be a joke. Chu Yang didn't expect to see a familiar face after he had traveled for thousands of miles. Two people whom he had been eagerly looking forward to meeting but had yet to appear. Mo Tianji and Chu Lu. These two people were dressed in white. They stood quietly under a tree by the roadside and smiled as they watched Chu Yang and the other two come over. It was as if they already knew that Chu Yang and the other two would definitely take this path, so they waited here. When Chu Yang saw them, he was greatly shocked. This guy, who was behind the scenes and stirred up a storm in the world, was actually here as if he had nothing to do with it? You can't go overboard like this, right? Big brother. Chu Lu's pretty face was a little red. She looked at Mo Qingwu with a complicated expression. Second brother. Mo Qingwu's expression was also a little complicated. She looked at Mo Tianji and then at Chu Lu. She was also a little helpless. Beast? When Chu Yang saw them, he didn't have time to be surprised at their reunion. He shouted and pounced forward, grabbing Mo Tianji and giving him a beating. Mo Tianji was really caught off guard by this calculation. He was already thrown to the ground by Chu Yang and was beaten into a panda with just a few punches and kicks. Mo Tianji screamed. Chu Lu hurriedly went forward to mediate. Big brother, what's wrong with you? Why are you beating him up? Tianji what? What did you call him just now? You actually called him Tianji? You beast. Chu Yang shouted angrily, tell me, what did you do to my sister? How could you make her call you that? You beast. Chu Lu's face immediately turned red. She covered her face and retreated to the side, stomping her feet continuously. I didn't. Mo Tianji did his best to defend himself. I didn't. I really didn't. Chu Yang punched him again and again with great force. He cursed as he punched, you beast. Hooligan. Pervert. Scoundrel. Shameless. What did you just say? You haven't? You beast. The more he fought, the more he vented his anger. The more he fought, the more energetic he became. This bastard has been hindering my relationship with Mo Qingwu for the past few years. Now it's finally time for him to return the favor. The feeling was really great. Mo Tianji finally couldn't take it anymore and fought back. The master of the Tribulation Sword and the strategist of the Tribulation Sword were fighting like street thugs. If anyone who knew the identity of the two saw this, their eyes would definitely pop out. Mo Tianji finally realized that Chu Yang wasn't worried about his sister at all. He was purely taking revenge on him for some of his past actions. Otherwise he wouldn't have become more and more aggressive. Naturally, he couldn't stand being beaten one-sidedly and naturally fought back more and more vigorously. Dust filled the air as they fought. They twisted and turned, rolled and screamed incessantly. On the side, Zi Sheqing smiled as she watched the two brothers fight. She didn't even have the slightest intention of stopping them. She was just watching the show. On the other side, Mo Qingwu and Chu Le'er were facing each other. Both of their faces were a little red. Finally, Mo Qingwu asked first, "In the future, will you call me sister-in-law or should I call you sister-in-law?" Chu Le'er snorted and said, "Do you dare to call Mo Tianji uncle?" Mo Qingwu was stunned. "Then do you dare to call Chu Yang that?" Chu Le'er snorted and rolled her eyes. She didn't say anything. Since the first time the two girls met, they were somewhat at odds with each other. They didn't give in to each other and were still at loggerheads. Now that Chu Le'er finally got together with Mo Tianji, Mo Qingwu instinctively thought that it was time for her to vent her anger. She didn't expect it to still be a stalemate. "I'm your sister-in-law and you're my sister-in-law. Chu Yang's brother-in-law is Mo Tianji and Mo Tianji's brother-in-law is Chu Yang. What a messy relationship." Mo Qingwu frowned for a long time and finally came up with a compromise. "Why don't we each talk about our own matters? No one should think of being superior to the other. How about that?" Chu Le'er looked up at the sky and said proudly, "That won't do. There's a fundamental difference between the two." Mo Qingwu was confused. "What difference is there in essence? What's the difference?" Chu Le'er rolled her eyes and said, "The situation is completely different. How can we generalize? You and my brother, it's you who wooed my brother. Me and your brother, it's your brother who wooed me. And I haven't agreed yet." Mo Qingwu burst into tears in an instant. "That useless second brother of mine. Is it so difficult to pick up a girl? That's not right. When did I woo Chu Yang? Back then it was Chu Yang who wooed me. That's right." Mo Qingwu was a little lacking in confidence and retorted with puffed cheeks. "You know very well what exactly happened." Chu Le'er looked at her triumphantly as if she had won a battle. Mo Qingwu snorted and said, "That's still not right. Back then at Moyen Heaven, everyone could tell what you were thinking. It was clearly you who wooed my second brother. What's the difference between the two of us?" Chu Le'er's expression didn't change. She said boldly, "Is there such a thing? Why don't I remember? You must have remembered wrongly, right?" The two women went back and forth, and it looked like a stalemate was about to form. Chu Yang and Mo Tianji had already stopped fighting by now. Their fight was a small matter. Right now, a big matter was about to develop. They looked at the two women fighting with each other with a huge headache, feeling speechless and at a loss of what to do. Looking at the situation, there was no way to even mediate the fight. Chu Yang looked. On one side was his sister, and on the other side was his wife. Mo Tianji frowned. On one side was his wife and on the other was his sister. The two of them were usually wise and resourceful people, but in the face of such a situation, they could only pretend to be deaf and mute, pretending not to hear anything. However, even though the two of them shrank back, Mo Qingwu and Chu Le'er wouldn't let the matter rest. Mo Qingwu pouted and walked over. She hugged Chu Yang's arm and asked threateningly, "Tell me, was I the one who wooed you back then or was it you who wooed me? I remember that you took the initiative to give me a saber and a lot of other things. You even told me many stories." Chu Yang's forehead was full of sweat. He hurriedly explained, "Yes, I was the one who wooed you. Yes, I was the one who wooed you." Mo Qingwu snorted triumphantly and rolled her eyes at Chu Le'er. Chu Le'er snorted with great dissatisfaction. She walked up to Mo Tianji with her hands on her hips, looking like a standard queen. She asked in a deep voice, "Was I the one who wooed you or was it you who wooed me?" The pitiful brainiac immediately lowered his head. He hurriedly raised his hands and said with a fawning expression, "I was the one who wooed you. Hee." With a fawning expression and a fawning smile, Chu Le'er then turned her face and looked at Mo Qingwu with her nose in the air. She snorted softly. Mo Tianji and Chu Yang were both wiping their sweat. "Your sister is really fierce." Chu Yang looked defeated. "Isn't your sister the same?" Mo Tianji's forehead was full of cold sweat. "Your sister." Chu Yang sighed. "Your sister." Mo Tianji sighed. The two men saw the storm of their future life at the same time. No matter if it was a hero or a commoner, the most troublesome thing was family discord, mother-in-law and daughter-in-law discord. Now the two of them were at odds with each other. All of you shut up. Zi Shiqing shouted angrily. What's there to argue about? Chuyang. Chuyang was about to slip away when he was stopped. Let me ask you, was I the one who wooed you, or was it you who wooed me? Zi Shiqing's expression was very dangerous. Obviously, she was triggered by the fact that someone gave her a lot of things when they were wooing her. I wooed you, of course I wooed you, Minister Chu said hurriedly. He smiled fawningly and shook his head while wagging his tail. Zi Shiqing snorted and waved her hand. Let's go. As for the matter between the two of you, you still have a generation to fight for. What's the hurry? Mo Qingwu and Chu Le looked at each other and snorted at the same time. One of them turned her head to the left while the other turned her head to the right. They followed Zi Shiqing and left. Chu Yang and Mo Tianji were speechless. They were covered in cold sweat. The two of them followed behind the three women dejectedly. They felt that even their intestines were tangled into a ball. They thought that Zi Shiqing was here to mediate. Who would have thought that the conflict she started with one sentence would lead to a generation of guidance? They thought that they might have to choose between their sister and their wife for the rest of their lives. The two smart people felt that they would rather die than live. Men. Chu Yang shook his head and sighed. It's not easy. Mo Tianji's face was solemn as he finished Chu Yang's sentence. Sigh, sigh. The two of them sighed at the same time. How can we make your sister take a step back? Why is my sister the one taking a step back? Why doesn't your sister take a step back? Do you still have a conscience? Do you dare to say it in front of her? Do you dare? Am I the one without a conscience, or are you the one without one? You're a heartless thing. The two of them glared at each other. Damn you. Chu Yang turned his head and strode forward. Damn you. Mo Tianji rolled his eyes and strode forward confidently. They hadn't walked far when they heard the sound of chatter and laughter in front of them. They stared and saw the three women gathered together again, gesticulating and discussing happily. There was even laughter from time to time. Chu Yang and Mo Tianji looked at each other and felt a great sense of defeat at the same time. Damn it, we were still worried that the two of them would continue fighting like this. Chapter 2468. Women, oh women. Hearing the laughter coming from the front, Chu Yang and Mo Tianji sighed in relief. They looked at each other and smiled, incomparably peaceful. Just as they were about to let out a sigh of relief, they heard the two women in front of them arguing again, with red faces and thick necks. Then the two people's hearts were raised again. Then after a while the two beautiful heads were together again, jabbering and gesticulating. Along the way Chu Yang and Mo Tianji were completely in the same situation. Let out a sigh of relief, want to take a breath. Then suddenly raise it up. Then let out another sigh of relief, take another breath. Then suddenly raise it up again. This kind of endless vicious cycle. The two men who were unrivaled in their respective fields, who looked down on the world, simultaneously felt that their brains were about to turn into paste. Their mental illness could erupt at any time, and they were about to reach a kind of brain-damaged state. Men with high IQ really didn't have high EQ. The two with high IQ could only choose to change the topic in response to this phenomenon, turning a deaf ear to other issues as they discussed other issues. Why are you waiting here? I'm waiting for you. Waiting for me? Yes. We saw Wu Juqing before. Wu Juqing's strength has increased very quickly in this period of time. I learned about the first bridge from him. But I don't want to go to the first bridge right now. Yes, I understand. So I'm waiting for you here. Yes, what's going on with the three big worlds? I'm actually waiting for you to talk about this matter. Chu Yang frowned and looked at Mo Tianji. Because, just from these words, he could hear that the main culprit who instigated the rebellion of the three big worlds was standing in front of him at this moment. I originally didn't want to face the three big worlds so quickly, mainly on Gu Duxing's side. Bu Luqing suddenly appeared, and even killed Wu Yiquang's subordinate generals. The big Western Sky officials were shaken, and several attempts to kill him were to no avail. Finally, the big Western Sky fully encircled and suppressed him. During this period, Gu Duxing coincidentally helped him fight a few battles. Finally, he got burned and became a wanted criminal together. Mo Tianji smiled faintly. And after I learned of this news, I suddenly thought of the words in for a penny, in for a pound. Chu Yang frowned and grinned. Oh? As soon as I think of it, I'll do it. I'll simply use this idea as a basis, and I'll use everything that I can currently use. I'll start stirring up wind and rain in the Heavenly Secret Intelligence Department. The first step is to unite all of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion's powers in the Great Western Sky, and dispatch experts to secretly move out. I'll completely wipe out all of the Western Sky's official and civilian intelligence forces in one fell swoop. Emo Chinji had a pretentious look of disappointment on his face. Actually, I didn't think that I would succeed so easily. Since I've already started in for a penny, in for a pound, I conveniently uprooted the intelligence network of the Extreme Heaven Sect and the Green Heaven Sect. Emo Tianji sighed. Facing Chu Yang's crazy gaze, he said, actually, you also know that sometimes when one's strength is too strong, one will instead feel very frustrated, because there's no opponent. It's really distressing. Invincibility is really a lonely thing. I didn't do it on purpose. How did I become invincible? Chu Yang's face was distorted. It seemed as if he wanted to vomit. Since things have already come to this, the war in the Extreme Heaven Sect is definitely going to break out. So, I've already started in for a pound, in for a pound. Emo Chinji said casually. Since you're already invincible, why don't you just start with the other heavens and earth? Why only these three? Aren't you afraid of using a sledgehammer to kill a chicken? Chu Yang asked sarcastically. For the time being, don't think about becoming fat in one go. Otherwise you'll be stuffed to death. Emo Chinji pretended to be sanctimonious as he lectured. It's not advisable to do it in one go. Rice has to be eaten one mouthful at a time. The road has to be taken one step at a time. I thought you understood this principle. Wretch. Chu Yang finally couldn't help but vomit. So, you also understand this principle. Then, why did you start the war between the three heavens and earth? Who's the one who wants to be stuffed to death? No. Although my current strength is still slightly insufficient, with the help of the other heavens and earth brothers, I can handle it. Emo Chinji smiled faintly. If this matter can succeed, of course, it'll be for the best. Even if it doesn't, I still want to find that place in these heavens and earth. Chu Yang raised his head abruptly. That place. Your real goal is actually... That's right. Emo Chinji said, after careful calculation, I believe that Myriad Saints' True Spirit's base camp can only exist in the Extreme Sky, Clear Sky, and Big Western Sky. Now that there's an opportunity, of course we have to make a move. The sooner we get rid of this huge hidden danger, the better. Chu Yang was silent for a moment. Then he asked cautiously, is it reliable? There's a 70% chance. Emo Chinji pondered for a moment. After careful consideration he gave this number. Chu Yang was silent. Then he slowly nodded. Emo Chinji said that there was a 70% chance. Then, it proved that the reliability of this matter had already exceeded a 100% chance. Emo Tianji was never one to speak confidently. If this matter is true, then this battle will definitely be earth-shattering. Because this is undoubtedly digging up the foundation of the Saint Monarchs. Chu Yang let out a long sigh. So, when the time comes, we must contact the East Sovereign and the Demon Empress through you. Only then will we have a certain chance of victory. Emo Chinji said, this is the main reason why I've been waiting for you here. Chu Yang nodded silently. Also, during this period of time, other than Gu Duxing, Ao Shiyun, and Dong Wushang, the subordinates of the other brothers can secretly participate and help. However, they cannot appear in person. Emo Chinji said solemnly, including you, me, Qing Wu, and the others must also not appear. This is to avoid alerting the enemy. Chu Yang frowned and said, if that's the case with just the strength of the three of them wanting to go against the three heavenly courts, I'm afraid it's too difficult and too weak. Emo Chinji said, I'm watching and the Heavenly Army Intelligence Department is watching. There should be no problem. Emo Chinji said, if they can't grow in adversity, what right do they have to be supreme in the world? Chu Yang let out a long sigh. After a long time he said, all right. I can endure it, but you may not be able to. Emo Chinji said, once Gu Duxing or Dong Wushang are in danger of certain death, you will definitely take action. And once you take action, it will definitely involve the appearance of too many people. When the brothers see you take action, they will definitely not sit idly by. So, the other reason why I'm waiting for you here is, Emo Chinji fixed his gaze on Chu Yang for a long time and said, expel you from the Heavenly Imperial Court. You can go outside and play. Chu Yang was exasperated. To put it more clearly, you want me to find a place to behave for a period of time? Emo Chinji smiled faintly. That's right. Wait until we confirm that place. Then you can appear out of nowhere and turn the tide. Chu Yang did not speak for a long time. After a long time he scolded, "You bastard, you're indeed the number one sly person in the world." Mo Tianji smiled. You flatter me, you flatter me. Actually, it's not just you. I also have to tuck my tail between my legs. From now on, I won't appear in the martial world rashly for a period of time. On the surface, let the three of them stir up all the trouble. Most of the other forces have to be hidden in the dark. According to the official statement, my Tianji Intelligence Department still has a lot of enmity with the three of them. During this period of time, we have also suffered a lot of losses. Chuyang was speechless for a long time. You are a god and a ghost. Continue to be the mastermind behind the scenes. Mo Tianji still smiled. You flatter me. I like being the person behind the scenes the most. Letting the enemy sink into ignorance until they die has always been my favorite thing to do. Chuyang pondered for a moment and said, if that's the case, you must ensure the safety of the brothers. Mo Tianji shook his head. I really can't guarantee this. Chuyang gnashed his teeth in hatred. Mo Tianji, are you really going to stand by and do nothing? Even if you are addicted to being the mastermind behind the scenes, you can't just give up like this, right? Mo Tianji was silent for a long time after hearing this. Then he smiled bitterly and said, Big brother, you don't know the current situation. The current situation is very delicate. To tell you the truth, even if I have the ability to guarantee, I can't guarantee it. Or rather, I shouldn't guarantee it. That's because we've all reached a level that's relatively at the peak. If we take one more step forward, we will all be at the level of the world's dominators. Mo Tianji's voice had a kind of indescribable dullness. At this level, we are no longer existences that can be controlled by anyone. Therefore, even though everyone has the same goal and is working hard for the same goal, everyone has their own way of doing things. We can't rashly interfere and intervene. Misfortune, fortune, life and death, only we can bear it. After crossing this level, there will be a long road in the future. We have to walk it ourselves. Mo Tianji raised his head and looked at Chuyang seriously. If you and I continue to blindly protect like this, the consequences will not be optimistic. In fact, it will be unimaginable. Our crisis is actually greater than the crisis that our brothers have experienced in the past. We can't be mentioned in the same breath. Mo Tianji sighed. Chuyang was also silent. Mo Tianji's words were very obscure. There were even some vague metaphors. But Chuyang was able to understand. Yes, if they continued to protect like this, sooner or later, there would be a day when someone would fall behind. At that time they would fall behind. It would be an irreparable loss. And all the protection now, in the long run, was actually harming them. It was the main culprit that pushed them to a dead end. That's good. There are still many roads in the future. Indeed, we need to walk on our own in order to walk steadily. Chuyang nodded silently. Chapter 2469. Mo Tianji said, How could I not know that you value relationships? It's inevitable that you'll feel uncomfortable when you hear this. But sometimes your discomfort now is for the sake of everyone's happiness in the future when we're together forever. If someone suffers irreparable harm, we'll take revenge for them. Mo Tianji's lips trembled and he said, But we've already reached this stage. There's no turning back. Every single one of us has to bear the responsibility for everything. If you want to reach the peak of the world, you can't rely on others. You can't rely on external help. Mo Tianji's last sentence made Chuyang completely give up on this idea. After remaining silent for a long time, he finally agreed. Yes, if you want to reach the peak of the world, you can only rely on yourself. You can't rely on others to help you. To them, it's a shame that can't be washed away. Everyone is proud and arrogant. Who would accept being helped by others to reach the position of supreme martial artist? Even if they are good brothers, even if they know each other well, they can't do that. I'm going to the Demon Emperor Heaven now to settle some matters. Chuyang made a prompt decision. Since he had already made a decision, he should immediately carry it out. Hesitating and not moving forward would only ruin things. After I've gone to the Demon Emperor Heaven and settled the various matters, I'll bring Jianghu, Butian and the others to the Eastern Royal Heaven. We'll leave the Celestial Imperial Court through the path that Shui Leihan had opened up. We'll make a trip back to the Heaven Imperial Court. Just as well. I'm going to the Lake of Despair. Chuyang's eyes were filled with deep longing. Not only for the Lake of Despair but also for his friends, brothers, parents and family there. All right. Mo Tianji nodded. Lur and I will also hide behind the scenes. We'll see what these three fellows can do to the three worlds. Will they succeed or die? Only after chaos can there be great governance. The Heaven Imperial Court's current situation is really chaotic. We can't guarantee that there aren't other spies in the upper echelons of the Heaven Imperial Court. If we want to defeat the heavenly demons in the future and eliminate them, we don't have any confidence at the current stage. Only by grasping as much power as possible in your own hands can you have a greater chance of success. Emotianji said indifferently, therefore this chaos is necessary. The chaos will continue to expand. It may even expand to the entire Heaven Imperial Court. Moreover, in such a chaotic situation, it may not be a bad thing if the heavenly demons attack. The Heavenly Imperial Court really needs to wake up. Chu Yang nodded in agreement. Mo Tianji had already considered all of the possible scenarios. Everything had been planned out thoroughly. Even the worst-case scenario was almost ready. Wait until you reach the heavenly layer. Mo Tianji hesitated for a moment and finally smiled bitterly. There was a look of longing in his eyes, but he didn't say anything else. I know. Chu Yang smiled comfortingly. Even if he missed home, how could his brothers not miss home? He would be able to return this time, but none of them would be able to leave. These missions would all be on his shoulders. This unexpected reunion, the time they spent together was really short. The 5 of them traveled together for less than 3 days before they went their separate ways again. They probably wouldn't be able to contact each other for a long period of time. However, Chu Yang was still very relieved. Other than trusting Mo Tianji's ability, it was also because Chu Lu seemed to be really happy. When she was with Mo Tianji, Lu clearly held the absolute dominant position. Although Chu Lu tried her best to hide it and was very shy, Chu Yang could still clearly feel the happiness and satisfaction in his sister's eyes and some other details. Chu Yang was very happy about this. He was really very happy. Of course, other than being happy, he also felt a little emotional. I didn't expect that the master of calculation and manipulation, who has the world in his hands, who has the wisdom of a generation's calamity, who can devise strategies to determine victory from 1,000 miles away, would finally fall into a family of henpecked men. Fate makes fools of people. Thinking about this, he couldn't help but sigh in his heart. In addition, Chu Lu once secretly told Chu Yang that she had already surpassed her master, Wu Cheng, in terms of cultivation and poison. When the little girl spoke, her face was full of pride, looking forward to being praised. Of course, Chu Yang wouldn't let her down. He praised her to the best of his ability and also asked about Wu Cheng's recent situation, especially his mentality. From Chu Lu, he found out that Wu Cheng's mentality was pretty good now. Also, his brothers had collected countless heavenly treasures for him to cultivate. This old brother was currently in a secret place very close to purple cloud heavens, cultivating and improving himself with all his might. Although Wu Cheng's poison techniques weren't as fast as Lu's, he was still improving day by day. He believed that it wouldn't be long before he could return to his brother's camp with his strength. His brothers were also looking forward to the arrival of that day. With regards to his disciple surpassing him, Wu Cheng didn't feel any disappointment or anger. Instead, he felt that it was normal. Moreover, he didn't feel ashamed to ask his disciple about the more profound way of using poison. At this point, Chu Yang was completely at ease. However, he still couldn't help but warn Chu Lu, poison is ultimately just a means. He looked at other people's younger sister and then looked at his own younger sister. Why was the gap so big? It was too awkward and too depressing. Finally, on the last day, Mo Qingwu seemed to have noticed her second brother's dejection and came over to chat with Mo Tianji. In just a short while, the great master of calculation and manipulation Mo Tianji was actually excited for a very long time. He was a little overwhelmed by the favor. For the entire afternoon he was smiling and happy. Finally, Mo Tianji left contentedly. Chu Lu and Mo Tianji disappeared from sight. Chu Yang, Mo Qingwu and Zi Shiqing continued on their journey. But this time their speed was much faster. They were almost rushing with all their might, like shooting stars chasing after the moon, rushing straight to Demon Emperor Sky. Mo Qingwu's expression was a little downcast but also a little gratified. She was disappointed that her second brother no longer belonged to her. She was gratified that her second brother had finally found happiness. The wind blew and the rain blew in the 3 heavens and earth, the clouds and the moon spanning 180,000 miles. When Demon Emperor Sky was finally in sight, Chu Yang simply had the urge to return home. This time he felt very different from the last time he was here. Demon Emperor Sky now seemed to be in the midst of reorganization. Troops were being trained everywhere. The atmosphere of an impending war was obvious and not concealed at all. At the docks, there were already solemn rows of troops beginning to gather. Murderous aura filled the sky. The leader was an elder of Demon Emperor Sky, an expert of the demon race, Xian Bao. What are they doing with such great fanfare? Jianghu asked. The first wave of the Demon Emperor army will be going to Purple Cloud Heavens. Xian Bao's voice was like a bell. Ah, may I ask how many people are going? Jianghu frowned. 1 million. Xian Bao was full of confidence. This time we are going to be the vanguard. First, we will find out the details of the extraterrestrial demons over there. The few of us naturally do not have the qualifications to fight them to the death. We still have this bit of self-awareness. When we reach there, we will defend and wait for reinforcements. We will conserve our strength and wait for the arrival of our army before we officially start the expedition. Chapter 2470. Jianghu nodded. Such an attack strategy was indeed an experienced strategy. It was neither greedy nor rash. It was just right. Looking at the army that was full of fighting spirit, Jianghu couldn't help but feel warm in his heart. He wrote a letter and asked Black Leopard to bring it to Jianghu Tian. He strictly instructed, after you go there, listen to Wuxia Yuncho's advice. Do not attack rashly. Black Leopard solemnly agreed and carefully kept the letter. Black Leopard was one of the few generals in the Demon Emperor Heaven, and his status was roughly the same as Meng Wuya's in the past. He had been through hundreds of battles, so how could he not know that this trip to the Purple Cloud Heavens would be filled with dangers and dangers? He also understood the benefits of having someone who was familiar with the geography and environment to help him. Since this person was able to gain Chu Yang's favor, he must have some outstanding aspects. Following Black Leopard's order, the million-strong army of Demon Emperor Heaven set off. Banners fluttered and murderous intent filled the air. Wave after wave, they disappeared into the sea of clouds. Boss Chu. A voice came. Jianghu turned around and saw that it was Yao Ningning of Demon Emperor Heaven. This time, it was actually this Demon Emperor who came to send the army off personally. Why did you think of sending the army out at this time? Jianghu asked, puzzled. This is the decision made by my mother. I'm just a representative. Yao Ningning was clad in golden armor and looked valiant. However, the moment he saw Jianghu, he immediately jumped up and down. The solemn and dignified look that he had earlier disappeared without a trace. But as a representative, you're no small matter. Jianghu couldn't help but laugh. Looking at the guards beside Yao Ningning, Jianghu knew that from Yao Huangtian's departure this time and from the fact that his grandfather had sent him off, a new round of power had already begun. The era of the Demon Empress leading the demon race was about to pass. And the era of the next Demon Emperor had begun. Perhaps today was the day of the new Demon Emperor. The army had already set off. Yao Ningning had nothing to do if he stayed. He simply followed Jianghu to Luohua City. Didn't my heavenly armament pavilion send troops to help this time? Jianghu asked as he walked. Someone once suggested, but sister-in-law rejected it. Yao Ningning said, Bu Tianxia said that the time is not right yet. Right now, the Heavenly Armament Pavilion is training as if their lives are on the line. Every bit of strength they raise will increase their survivability in battle. Speaking up to here, the Grand Elder sighed, the two sisters-in-law are really capable. How long has it been, and the strength of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion's ragtag army is already above our Demon Emperor Heaven's regular army. Jianghu grunted and said, I'm afraid that there's still the issue of unifying the commands. The phenomenon of being free and undisciplined. There's still a long way to go for a regular army to follow orders and enforce prohibitions. Boss, your words hit the nail on the head. Yao Ningning said in admiration. Sister-in-law said the same thing. Therefore, the most important thing for the Heavenly Armament Pavilion now is discipline. Well, I think it's about time. Jianghu laughed. Yao Ningning moved closer and said flatteringly, but, boss, when your Heavenly Armament Pavilion's training is successful, then give me tens of thousands of people. Such an army is really coveted. Get lost. Jianghu glared at him unceremoniously. Get lost. While he was at it, he kicked the Grand Elders but hard. Yao Ningning screamed and was thrown away. He smiled apologetically. If you don't want to give, then don't give. Why did you hit people? It's wrong to hit people. On the other side, the accompanying experts of the Demon Emperor Heavens all widened their eyes as if they had seen a monster. This guy is really awesome. Facing our Grand Elder, he actually hit and scolded him as he wished. He didn't show any respect at all. And after the Grand Elder was hit and scolded, he still had to smile apologetically. This guy is simply too powerful to the point of being unreasonable. In half a day the group arrived at Luohua City. In fact, the news of Chu Yang's arrival had already been sent back. At this time, at the gate of Luohua City, the higher-ups of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion had already lined up to welcome them. Beside the people of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion, there was already a person who stood out from the crowd and stood upright. This person was at least half a head taller than the tallest person beside him, but his physique was even thinner than the thinnest person beside him. His green robes fluttered in the wind, making him look like an oversized human-shaped bamboo pole, with an unrestrained and pretentious air about him. It was the Tang clan's third young master, the new god of wealth of Luohua City, Tang Yangwei. The Tang clan's third young master was now extraordinary. His whole body was covered in jewels, and there was a fist-sized gem hanging on his neck. It almost broke his slender neck into two pieces, but it was still shining brightly. His whole body stood there incomparably eye-catching. There were actually several gemstones on the top of this fellow's head, a green transparent bracelet on his wrist, and a belt on his waist that was also full of jewels. There was even a whole string of gemstones hanging from the belt. The most amazing thing was that there seemed to be a shining gem on the side of his nose. When Chu Yang saw it, he was dazzled by the colorful jewels and his eyes were dazzled. Bosh Chu. The Tang clan's third young master rushed up excitedly, and his eyes were almost filled with tears. "I'm rich, me." Chu Yang suddenly covered his eyes with his hands. He was caught off guard, and the light refracted by the jewels on the Tang clan's third young master's body shone into his eyes. He was dazzled and tears flowed down his face. He couldn't help but murmur, "Fuck. Third young master, you're really rich, ha." The Tang clan's third young master laughed strangely like a duck. He was overjoyed. "You don't know, but I've been elated, high-spirited and complacent these days." Chu Yang painfully wiped his tears and rubbed his eyes. He was seriously allergic to the jewels on the Tang clan's third young master. "Let's talk about it later. Let me recover first. Your jewels are really dazzling. They're simply the strongest visual killer." The Tang clan's third young master laughed loudly, and chattered endlessly, and continued to show off his achievements. During this period, the Tang clan's third young master was indeed in charge of all the general business of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion, including all the procurement. Therefore, the Tang clan's third young master had really made a fortune. He naturally had the upper hand in the clan's struggle. He had thoroughly trampled on his elder brother. It could be said that he outshone the others and was infinitely awe-inspiring. It was said that when this guy walked, it was as if he had a hernia. They chatted along the way and finally returned to the Heavenly Armament Pavilion's encampment. The Tang clan's third young master had a matter to attend to at the last minute. So, he left behind a sentence before he left. "Big brother Chu, I'll come and drink with you tomorrow." "Oh my God." Chu Yang sighed in so much pain that he wished he was dead. "If you do it again, I'm afraid I'll be blinded by the jewels on your body. A killer." At the door, two stunning beauties stood there quietly. One was graceful and luxurious, and had the inviolable dignity of a king. The other was cold and incomparable, and had a faint awe-inspiring majesty. But both of them had the same heavenly beauty, and were unparalleled in this world. They were Tai Bu Tian and Wu Qianqian. Chu Yang's heart warmed, and he took large strides forward to greet them. Tai Bu Tian and Wu Qianqian's beautiful eyes were already fixed on Chu Yang's body. Gradually, glistening teardrops flickered in their eyes. But they restrained themselves and waited with a smile. It had been a full year since they parted this time. Chu Yang had also been worried about these two women every day. Now that they had met again, he suddenly felt an inexplicable heartache. These two women had always been like this. When he went out to make a living in the Jianghu, they silently guarded his back. When he needed them, they would definitely step forward bravely. They would go through life and death with him, through thick and thin, and would never leave him. They wouldn't deliberately fight for glory with anyone. But he could rest assured about anything that was in their hands. As long as it was something that was entrusted to them, no matter whether it was a big or small matter, they would always be able to handle it properly. Chu Yang took large strides forward. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, he stretched out his hands and fiercely hugged the two delicate bodies into his arms. In an instant he felt that both sides of his chest were soaked with tears. Mo Qingwu and Zi Shiqing smiled at each other. They didn't disturb him, nor did they try to blend into this scene. They said softly, "Let's go and watch Tan Tan train his troops." "Okay. I heard that this guy is actually leading the troops during this time." I'm a little worried. He won't turn all the soldiers under his command into narcissists like him, right? You're right. Let's go and take a look quickly. Maybe we can stop him. The two women disappeared with a whoosh sound. Chu Yang and Zi Sheqing had traveled hundreds of thousands of miles and accompanied each other day and night. But Tai Butian and Wu Qianqian could only anxiously wait at home. Now they had finally returned. This period of time belonged to them. It completely belonged to them. Chu Yang hugged the two lithe bodies. His body flashed and disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. Tai Butian and Wu Qianqian were so embarrassed that they moaned. They were about to resist when they realized that they had already returned to their rooms. It's hard for a heartless guy like you to remember that I live here. Wu Qianqian's eyes glistened with tears, but she pretended to be jealous with a trembling voice. Chu Yang chuckled. Senior Marshal Sister Wu's room is always so fragrant. He lowered his head and with lightning speed, he bit Wu Qianqian's rosy cherry lips. Wu Qianqian moaned and her whole body softened. Tai Butian's face turned red. She struggled hard and said in a panic, "You guys continue. I have to go out for a while. There are many things." Before she finished speaking, Chu Yang had already changed his position. He covered her mouth and said vaguely, "No matter what important things you have to do now, it's not as important as what we have to do. Your Majesty, it's been such a long time. Don't you miss me serving you? How can we delay such an important matter? It's harmonious now. I'll definitely be reported if I continue to write. Besides, I'm a pure man. I won't write that. So, I'll omit 7 million words. In addition, I recommend a new work. The book number is Great Immortal Tomb, 31444241. Brothers who like to read counterattack plots can read it. If you feel that it's not good, you can curse it to death. If you feel that it's good, haha, it means that my eyesight is good." Chapter 2471. Tai Butian snorted. Her slender hand had already pinched the tender part of Chu Yang's waist. However, she was immediately countered by Chu Yang using the same method. She could only hear Minister Chu mumbling something in his mouth. During this period of time, "I've been stifled to death." Tai Butian started to tremble all over. She couldn't control herself. During this period of time, Chu Yang had been really stifled. He was obviously guarding two heavenly beauties, Zi Sheqing and Imo Qinggu, but he could only look but not touch them. The result of being able to look but not touch them was that the more he looked, the stronger the fire in him became. The more the fire burned, the more he had to stifle it, and so on. Every time he wanted to make a move, he would be jointly resisted by the two ladies. Helpless, Minister Chu could only turn his desire into motivation to practice martial arts. Practicing martial arts in cold water, forcefully suppressing a certain fire. During this period of time, his cultivation had once again advanced by leaps and bounds. However, the impulse that belonged to a man was getting stronger and stronger. A certain fire was only being suppressed, but it had never been vented. At this moment he finally saw Wu Qianqian and Tai Butian, whom he hadn't seen for a long time. Finally he had a chance to vent. That impulse had reached its peak in an instant and could no longer be suppressed. This was actually the relationship between a man and a woman. If they didn't have a substantial relationship, although they would be affectionate after a long separation, they would never go so far as to have sex and fight at close quarters. No matter what, they should have a heart-to-heart talk, a meal, and reminisce about their parting, before doing something else. But now, when Chu Yang came back, it was only noon, but in the blink of an eye the moon was already in the sky, in Wu Qianqian's bedroom. That intense storm had just come to an end. After doing that to his heart's content, Chu Yang lay comfortably on the bed in a state of sleep. Beside him were two people in the same state. Panting heavily, the two women were as soft as two puddles of fragrant mud. At this moment, Wu Qianqian and Tai Butian were so weak that they didn't even want to move their little fingers. They didn't even have the strength to speak. Chu Yang sighed with great satisfaction. It had been more than a year. It was really not easy. Finally he was full for once today. Only then did he begin to talk about everything that had happened when he left. Wu Qianqian and Tai Butian listened with sleepy eyes. But they only listened. They really didn't have any strength. She waited until she heard that Chu Yang had returned to the heavenly layer continent. After recounting the story for nearly an hour, the two women finally recovered some of their strength. At the same time they proposed to follow him back. Tai Butian hadn't seen her son for a long time, and Wu Qianqian had an old father in the lower three heavens. They all had their own concerns in their hearts. At this moment they actually had the opportunity to go back and take a look. How could he miss it? Chu Yang repeatedly agreed. However, you want to go back? It's not a big deal. As long as you make me thoroughly comfortable today, anything can be discussed. Chu Yang snorted and stated his conditions. This condition made Tai Budian and Wu Qianqian feel a wave of helplessness. They really couldn't take it anymore. Sometimes a person's strength was limited. Don't tell me you're still not comfortable enough. The two girls thought angrily. She thought of this beast's powerful physical strength and his burgeoning desire. The two women's hearts were beating like drums. It was too difficult to satisfy this beast's appetite with just the two of them. How was this a beast? He was worse than a beast. Thinking of this, the two were a little angry. Mo Qingwu and Zi Xieqing, these two excellent reserves. Why haven't they been taken down after so long? No matter what, I have to quickly drag them down. Otherwise, I really can't handle it. Just as they were thinking, they realized that Chu Yang had already turned over and got up. His two hands were moving mischievously again. The two women instantly exclaimed and wanted to escape. But how could Chu Yang allow the delicious meat in his mouth to fly away? He hugged them forcefully and immediately turned over. The two women begged for mercy. How could Chu Yang allow it? That night, spring came again and again. Minister Chu showed off his power and thoroughly enjoyed himself for once. The next day, Chu Yang was in high spirits and complacent. His face was flushed red as he paced back and forth in the courtyard. It was obvious that he was in a very, very good mood. Mo Qingwu and Zi Xieqing rolled their eyes and ignored him. This bad guy, he must have done something bad last night, and it must have been a lot of bad things. It wasn't until nighttime when Chu Yang had finished dealing with the backlog of things in the Heavenly Armament Pavilion that he finally had some free time. And at this time, Tai Budian and Wu Qianqian had just woken up. Last night, they had been tormented by a beast for a whole night. They had really been hovering between life and death many times. Now that they saw Chu Yang again, they actually had some lingering fear. Especially when they saw the perverted look in his eyes, Tai Butian's face turned pale and fear overtook her. This animal is worse than a beast. He's too hard to deal with. It's hard to match him. Speaking of returning to the heavenly continent, Zi Xieqing took the initiative to bring it up. I won't go this time. I want to stay here and look after the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. She smiled faintly and said, there has to be someone here to keep watch. Besides, the training here is directly related to the revival of the purple cloud heavens. It's most appropriate for me to stay here. Once Zi Xieqing said this, everyone couldn't persuade her anymore. Firstly, Zi Xieqing indeed didn't have any old friends in the heavenly continent. Secondly, there was indeed a need for someone to stay here. If Zi Xieqing stayed, not only could she replace Tai Budian and Wu Qianqian, but she could also represent Chu Yang to the greatest extent. Thirdly, Zi Xieqing had something that even Tai Budian and Wu Qianqian couldn't compare to. She was originally from the demon clan and had an extremely close relationship with the upper echelons of the demon clan. Tai Budian was very grateful. She held Zi Xieqing's hand and almost choked. Big Sister Zi, thank you. Zi Xieqing did this mostly for Tai Budian and Wu Qianqian. This was something that everyone could guess. Who didn't want to go home with Chu Yang? Speaking of which, Zi Xieqing also had many complexes in the heavenly continent. Not to mention others, Mo Qingwu, Tai Budian and Wu Qianqian had all married into the Chu clan. As Chu Yang's future wife, how could they not want to marry into the Chu clan? Although Zi Xieqing was cold by nature, she was still a woman after all. This kind of complex was unavoidable. But eventually, someone would have to stay behind. If no one spoke up, it would be awkward. So at this time, Zi Xieqing took the initiative to suggest staying behind. Zi Xieqing smiled and held Tai Butian's hand. Silly, isn't it the same no matter who stays behind? She turned around and walked out. She said, I'll go over and familiarize myself with the work. You guys discuss the itinerary later. We'll do the handover later. Wu Qianqian and Tai Budian got up at the same time. Let's go together. We'll start the handover now. In the blink of an eye, there was no one left. Only Chu Yang and Mo Qingwu were left looking at each other. What was the situation now? They had only just started discussing why was there no one left. But it seemed that the discussion had already been completed. In just 3 days, Zi Xieqing, Tai Budian and Wu Qianqian had completed all the handover matters. With Zi Xieqing's intelligence and wisdom, it was naturally easy for her to deal with these matters. Moreover, with Meng Wuya, Chrysanthemum Saber King and Li Guanyu's assistance, Zi Xieqing had basically straightened out her work ideas in these 3 days. And Chu Yang and the others began to pack their bags and prepare to set off. Tai Budian and the other two girls began an unprecedented shopping spree to purchase the specialties of the Heaven Imperial Court. There were gifts for her father-in-law, her mother-in-law, her family, and her son, especially for her son. She bought a huge pile of toys and good food. Saying that it was piled up into a small mountain was the most conservative way of saying it. Chu Yang's eyebrows twitched. How monstrous was that son of his, Chu Yang had long known in his heart. If that little rascal were to give him divine weapons or heavenly treasures, that little rascal might still raise his eyelids. As for toys and good food, that little rascal probably wouldn't even raise his eyelids? There wouldn't even be a perfunctory plot. As he thought about it, Chu Yang felt his palm itching again. He thought to himself, if this little rascal really dares to show that he doesn't want it, then I'll make his ass bleed. I'll let that little rascal know what his father's authority and dignity are. It was really hard to describe the scale of the purchase this time. In any case, in terms of quantity, it only filled a few space rings. Tai Budian, Wu Qianxian and Imo Qingwu felt that it was about enough. After that, it was just simple shopping. As for the other participant, Chu Yang was so tired that his legs were almost broken. A certain king of hell couldn't help but look up and sigh. Shopping with women is definitely the world's best torture for men. From the way they bought things, one could roughly see the differences between the three women. Tai Budian still had some of a man's forthright character. She was generous and classy. Whenever she took a fancy to something, she would buy it with a wave of her hand and directly put it into the space ring. At most, she would just walk around a little more. Imo Qingwu, on the other hand, didn't buy anything after she took a fancy to it. She went to the 3 shops to compare before buying. Although there were some twists and turns, it could be considered clean and straightforward. Only Wu Qianxian, this great aunt, made Chu Yang directly address her as great aunt. This girl's way of doing things could be said to be extremely unconventional. She probably took a fancy to something but didn't buy it first. Then she continued shopping. After shopping for a round, she went back to the first shop she took a fancy to buy it. Then she continued shopping, looked for a new target, continued shopping and went back to buy it. Chu Yang was in so much pain that he wanted to die. What kind of strong physical body of a saint was it? It seemed to be useless here. Grandma, please spare me. Minister Chu's face was full of tears. Poor me, my legs are almost broken. To think that I, Tribulation Sword Master Chu Yang, didn't feel the slightest bit of hardship when I traversed 1,000,000 miles. Accompanying you shopping really makes me unable to bear the burden. Please have mercy, I will remember your kindness for a lifetime. Wu Qianxian snorted and rolled her eyes. She didn't say anything else and continued shopping. In the past, when she saw other women taking their husbands shopping, how satisfied they were, how envious and jealous she was. Now that she finally had the rare opportunity to shop with her man, how could she not shop but shop until she was satisfied? You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.